Chapter 264 Mechanical Puppets and the Great Development Technique. Chapter 264 Mechanical Puppets and the Great Development Technique. On the wasteland, a meter-long lizard stuck its head out from a heavily eroded rock and looked around, preparing for the day's hunt. But just as it crawled out several meters from its nest, a yellow monster about 3 meters long suddenly leaped out from the sandy soil. It used its 2 front claws and mouth, pouncing at the lizard and easily breaking its neck. Holding the corpse in its mouth, it then hurriedly rushed forth in some direction. This strange beast had 4 claws and a long pointed tail. It appeared to be a huge lizard, but its entire body was extremely hard. As it ran, it made creaking noises. It was actually a mechanical figurine. When this strange animal ran about half a kilometer, it reached a yellow-robed man sitting in meditation on a flat rock. Then it tossed the dead lizard next to this man's side and ran off. This yellow-robed man wasn't surprised in the slightest. His expression remained unwavered. He calmly moved his hand. The dead lizard at his side slowly flew up several feet in the air before stopping. Then this yellow-robed man extended his forefinger to the lizard's head and muttered something. Not long after, a faint white light slowly emitted from his extended forefinger. As he continued his incantation, the white light grew increasingly bright until it became blinding. Swiftly, seeing that the crucial moment had not yet passed, yellow-robed man yelled this in a low voice. The white light on his forefinger shot out a white thread that entered the deepest part of the lizard's skull. Then the yellow-robed man strenuously pulled back at the thread. His expression was solemn as he exercised extremely caution. Eventually, under the yellow-robed man's careful gaze, the white thread pulled out a green sphere of light from the lizard's corpse. It was light as a feather, only as large as his thumb. When the yellow-robed man saw this, he beamed as if he had acquired a rare treasure. A light flashed from his other hand, revealing a small light yellow jade bottle. Poof! Streaks of multicolored lights shot from the bottle, sweeping the green ball of light into the bottle. At this moment, the yellow-robed man let out a deep breath as if he were relieved of a burden, wiping a thin layer of sweat from his forehead. It could clearly be seen that his previous action had expended no small amount of energy. This soul extraction technique truly isn't something an early foundation establishment cultivator is easily capable of using. The probability of success is far too low. There's only 1 success for every 3 or 4 attempts. It seems I'll have to spend the whole day here. The yellow-robed man looked at the small jade bottle in his hand and muttered to himself. His face wore a slight expression of helplessness. This man was Han Li, who was currently practicing the Great Development Technique. The reason why he appeared at this barren area, about 50 kilometers away from the Spirit Stone mine, was because he wanted to gather animal souls. This was normally something that only people of the devilish Tao would do. The reason as to why Han Li was currently doing this was because he was studying the puppet sutras. Originally, after he studied the initial step of the puppet refinement technique, Han Li discovered that puppet refinement not only required the normal materials used to refine magic tools, but it also required the souls of living creatures. Otherwise, if it were refined without a soul, it wouldn't have any spiritual properties and would fundamentally be the same as a common figurine. The greater the grade of the puppet, the greater the soul it contained. Only as such would the puppet's efficacy be displayed. For this reason, at the end of the Puppet Sutras, it included 3 techniques commonly used by those of the devilish Tao: soul extraction technique, soul concentration technique, and soul refinement technique. This soul extraction technique was the magic technique that Han Li had used to extract the soul from the dead lizard. Not only was the power of this magic technique weak, but its rate of success was also low. Furthermore, it could only be used on corpses that had recently died. Compared to the secret techniques of the devilish Tao that specialized in dealing with souls, it could be said the difference in power was far too great. However, the sole benefit of this magic technique was that it required an extremely lower amount of magic power. Mid-foundation establishment cultivators would be able to frequently use it. Naturally, an early foundation establishment cultivator such as Han Li could also use it with difficulty, but the rate of success wouldn't be particularly high. The soul concentration technique was a magic technique that condensed souls. After all, powerful souls weren't easily found. Normally, high-grade puppets would use artificially strengthened souls that were refined from combining several tens or even several tens of weak souls. Although these kinds of souls weren't as good as innately strong souls, they were far stronger than using low-grade souls. Thus, this magic technique was a required technique to learn puppet refinement. The last was soul refinement technique. As its name implies, it is a magic technique used to refine and transform souls. After all, souls had to be refined together with the puppet. Raw souls weren't capable of being used. They must first undergo a particular method before they could be used for refinement. As for that lizard-like mechanical beast from before, after Han Li refined his first independent thread of spiritual sense from the Great Development Technique, it was the first mechanical puppet he personally refined. As for the souls he used, they were yellow mice's souls he conveniently acquired. Before that happened, Han Li had already failed 7 or 8 times. His success rate was truly nothing to brag about. But when Han Li sent his thread of separated consciousness into the puppet to control it, it felt incomparably wonderful. It felt far more responsive than operating magic tools, but it still wasn't as genuine as moving one's own limbs. In reality, his thread of consciousness and this mechanical beast seemed to have the relationship of superior and subordinate. The puppet would act in accordance to any orders given through his thoughts. As for how the puppet specifically moved, the puppet would decide by itself. In addition, what the puppet was capable of seeing and hearing, Han Li was also able of clearly sensing it. This caused him to be greatly pleased. The first time Han Li controlled a puppet, he felt a great childish and playful curiosity. Apart from the only elementary puppet beast he created, he also played around and operated a few higher-grade mechanical puppets he had on hand. He got to fulfill his childhood dreams of playing with figurines. As he controlled these puppets, Han Li gradually began to experience a few limitations of these puppets. First, these puppets could only be controlled 1.5 kilometers away from him. Any further from this distance, and the mechanical puppet would be incapable of movement. Also, his thread of consciousness would return to him. Han Li guessed that this was the maximum distance his divided consciousness could be separated from his body. As his cultivation and primordial spirit improved, this limitation would also increase. However, the next flaw was a deficiency of the puppet technique that he was unable to compensate for. When these puppets received their orders, there was a delay before they took action, during which they were unable to move as they desired. In true combat, his opponent would very likely be able to take advantage of this flaw. Even with these 2 flaws, this puppet technique was no trifling matter. By only further creating strands of spiritual sense and cultivating to the first layer of the Great Development Technique, he would be able to mutually contend with formidable foundation establishment characters. After all, with over 10 assistants at his side, even if they only had the strength of chi condensation, it would be more than enough to strengthen his defense. At the very least, if he were trapped again by that ghost spirit sect young master, he wouldn't need to fear that endless army of blood ghosts, as the actions of his low-grade mechanical puppets would only consume a few low-grade spirit stones. Only that huge tiger puppet from the 1,000 bamboo schools, Huang Long, with its amazing strength, would consume mid-grade spirit stones. However, Han Li reckoned that the puppet beast was of grade 3 or higher. It was capable of destroying a barrier created by several foundation establishment cultivations joining hands in 2 attacks. From this, its fearsome might could clearly be seen. But unfortunately, his Marshal Senior Lei used his magic treasure to turn that puppet into ashes. Else if Han Li had gotten hold of it, it would be an incomparably sharp trump card. As he thought of the advantages of having that huge tiger puppet, Han Li began to set his heart on refining such a puppet. After eventually refining several tens of elementary grade 1 puppets, Han Li decided to attempt to refine an elementary grade 2 puppet. This was something he had previously seen before, the main puppets the 1,000 bamboo school used to fight. So long as he was able to refine puppets of this grade, he wouldn't need to be scared of using up his puppets. However, refining grade 2 puppets couldn't be done with scrap. It required nearly all the materials needed to create a high-grade magic tool. The most important material was a large quantity of ironwood, several hundred years old. This particular material also cost the most. Actually, if Han Li was in his immortals cave, nurturing ironwood of a particular age wasn't a problem at all. However, with his current responsibilities, Han Li could only painfully acquire it by having others gather a great amount for him from distant market cities. Now that he had materials, he had to acquire an appropriate soul. After all, the soul of the most common animal inside the canyon, the yellow mouse, was far too weak. Even if he concentrated a bunch of their souls, it wouldn't produce a very remarkable improvement. Thus, Han Li set his eyes on the yellow mouse's predator, the wasteland lizard. As of this moment, Han Li had gone through 3 to 4 months of hard effort and had also created several strands of spiritual sense. Those several strands of consciousness had been used to control several low-grade puppet beasts to scour the entire wasteland for these lizards. Thus, the previous scene had occurred. After Han Li put away the small bottle that contained the lizard's soul, he closed his eyes and continued to cultivate the Great Development technique, slowly strengthening his primordial spirit. This Great Development technique was crucial to using puppet techniques. Han Li didn't dare to slack off. However, the Great Development technique truly deserved to be the core doctrine of the Thousand Bamboo School. It simply couldn't be compared to common consciousness-splitting secret techniques. Ordinary consciousness-splitting techniques merely split off a small portion of one's spiritual sense through force. The number of strands of spiritual sense that could be produced relied entirely on the strength of one's primordial spirit. Moreover, these techniques were unable to bolster the primordial spirit. The Great Development technique made up for this deficiency. When it was cultivated, it gradually strengthened the primordial spirit to the point where it could even be as strong as naturally powerful primordial spirits. Furthermore, its method of splitting the spiritual sense was far more safe and exquisite than that of common techniques, allowing divisions of spiritual sense far finer and greater in number without hindering the primordial spirit. With this comparison, it was no wonder the Great Development technique was considered the core of Thousand Bamboo School's teachings, and why Senior Martial Brother Lin had constantly longed for the final 3 layers of the chant. TL, the development Chinese letter in Great Development technique Chinese letter can mean spread or overflow, explaining its specialization in creating threads of divided consciousnesses, spiritual sense. TL, in Chapter 232, Senior Martial Brother Lin pleaded for his life with the Great Development technique after trying to take over Han Li's body. Chapter 265, War Situation. According to the Great Development technique, after cultivating it to the first layer, splitting over 10 strands of divine sense would be of no problem. After reaching the second layer, one could divide up to 100. Upon reaching to the third layer, like Senior Martial Brother Lin had done, one could split their consciousness into several hundreds of strands. When he thought of being able to control several hundreds of puppets in a battle after reaching the third layer, Han Li had felt a bit strange. However, this abnormal feeling was due to Han Li being unstoppable among Foundation establishment cultivators. But once he reached core formation, he would have to refine several hundreds of puppets of grade 3 of higher, equivalent to the strength of Foundation establishment cultivators. Otherwise, no matter how many he refined, they would unable to withstand a core formation cultivator's attack. That scene where Fatty Lay had swept away several hundreds of the Thousand Bamboo School's grade 2 puppets was still clear in his mind. Since refining each grade 2 puppet required the materials for a high-grade magic tool, to refine an even higher grade puppet would require materials for a top-grade magic tool at the very least. As such, if core formation cultivators who cultivated the puppet technique wished to suppress other core formation cultivators of the same strength, they would have to spend enough materials for several hundreds of top-grade magic tools at the very least. From this thought, Han Li could not help but be apprehensive for a long while. Not to mention the materials that would be wasted from refinement failure, as well finding hundreds of strong enough souls. This was also a major reason so few knew of the Thousand Bamboo School's puppet technique. After all, a sect's strength was evaluated on the number of core formation cultivators it possessed. With regards to battles between core formation cultivators, the Thousand Bamboo School was powerless while other sects thrived. Even if their Foundation establishment disciples were ferocious, they could only hold themselves up in a single region and become a mere local hegemon. Naturally, this was just some speculation from Han Li after he cultivated the Great Development technique and the puppet techniques. However, this puppet technique would cause Han Li's strength as a Foundation establishment cultivator to substantially increase. This fact wasn't false in the least. As of now, Han Li couldn't be bothered with future deficiencies. After all, this great war stirred across the cultivation worlds of several countries had just started. Not long after Han Li started guarding this spirit stone mine, a great ambush had unfolded at some desolate desert mountain between the 6 Devil Dao sects and the 7 sects of the state of Yue. Han Li gradually came to know the specific circumstances. Originally, Spirit Beast Mountain of the 7 sects was actually a branch of Devil Dao's controlling spirit sect, but the neutral sect had secretly eliminated the Devil Dao's intermediaries several thousand years ago and buried them in the state of Yue. As for this invasion of the state of UA, the Devil Dao had planned to take advantage of their formal relationship and hoped to use the same tactic they had used to seize the state of Jiang and Qi Jai to great effect. But who could have known that the ancestors of Spirit Beast Mountain had passed on their unwillingness to be part of the controlling spirit sect to their descendants through the past thousands of years? They were absolutely unwilling to have another overlord suddenly appear above their heads. As a result, after Spirit Beast Mountain released this information to the other 6 sects, they used an unknown method to convince the Devil Dao sects to attack a stronghold of 7 sect cultivators. As they mounted a raid with several thousand cultivators, they were ambushed by a great number of 7 sect cultivators en route. With the 7 sects' absolute advantage, the Devil Dao suffered a great loss, even losing 2 core formation cultivators during the fight. This was a great blow to the 6 Devil Dao sects, and naturally it was greatly celebrated by the 7 sects of the state of UA, greatly boosting their morale. Humiliated, the 6 Devil Dao sects flew into a rage and began their large-scale assault. Not to be outdone, the 7 sects laid out their defensive formations. Among the common border shared by the state of UA and the states of Jiang and Qi Jai, over 10 great battles had occurred there, resulting in the deaths of over 10,000 cultivators. With the additional deaths of 7 or 8 core formation cultivators, the battles had been extremely desperate. On the day a few cultivators came to pick up spirit stones, they told the guards this with lingering fear. This caused Han Li and other cultivators who heard this to become extremely apprehensive, secret rejoicing at not needing to fight in the war. Just by seeing how many core formation cultivators died in battle, one could imagine how dreadful the situation has become. However, the 6 Devil Dao sects were one of the 2 great powers in the Heavenly South region. Their strength truly couldn't be compared to the likes of the cultivation world of the state of UA. After 7 or 8 battles, the 7 sects clearly understood they would not be able to continuously withstand the opposition's fierce assault. If the 7 sects didn't prepare and establish great restriction formation in advance as cornerstones of their desperate struggle, they would be defeated without much resistance. But even if this were the case, the 7 sects wouldn't be able to withstand for long. During this time of certain crisis for the state of UA, the 7 sects had sent requests to the cultivators of the mid-level states of Yuan Wu and Zai Jin to come to their aid. Before the 7 sects had started their war against the 6 Devil Dao sects, it turned that they had already wisely sent eloquent messengers to the 2 country sects to request aid. When the cultivation sects of these 2 countries received these letters, they were naturally afraid that, after the Devil Dao seized the state of UA, their countries would be the next ones to be taken over. Without having the messengers spend time pleading, they agreed to provide aid. Joined together against a common enemy, the 2 countries sent a majority of their cultivators to provide assistance during that starry night. This new alliance greatly reduced the disparity in strength between the state of UA and the 6 Devil Dao sects. By relying on the protection of their powerful great formations, they were able to firmly resist the Devil Dao's assault. As such, the 6 Devil Dao sects' plan to seize the state of UA in a single burst was naturally shattered. The war sunk into a deadlock and became a battle of attrition. As a result, large decisive battles became less frequent while smaller-scale surprise attacks at the rear occurred in great number on both sides, particularly at locations where materials and spirit stones were produced. These raids eventually became the primary objective of the 7 sects and Devil Dao. Perhaps the warfront was too far away, but this specific spirit stone mine had not yet suffered an enemy attack. This was nothing short of a miracle. After all, other equivalently sized spirit stone mines had all already suffered 3 to 4 raids. But the more the raids occurred, the more the 7 sects became ill at ease. Half a month later, a group of 20 cultivators were dispatched as support, headed by a late Foundation establishment cultivator. Thus, the spirit stone mine naturally became far stronger. However, like a mountain longs for rain, Han Li felt a desire to cultivate the great development technique even more diligently. The distance to break through to the first layer was still far away. Among the second group of Qi condensation disciples to come, Han Li unexpectedly came across an acquaintance, that ugly man Zhang Wu one. Zhang Wu first appeared in the trial by blood and fire, chapter 193. He previously met at the trial by blood and fire. Zhang Wu also recognized Han Li. However, now that Han Li had a cultivation base at Foundation establishment, his expression darkened all over, switching between shock, envy, admiration, as well as many other emotions. Seeing him once again truly astonished Han Li. Finally, Zhang Wu bitterly smiled. He saluted Han Li in advance and somewhat unwillingly called him senior. Resisting a smile with difficulty, Han Li insipidly replied. When Han Li thought of Zhang Wu's many changing expressions as he sat in meditation, he couldn't help but knowingly smile and opened his eyes. At this moment, his mood was truly unsuitable for cultivating the great development technique. He would continue when his heart became tranquil. Time passed by quickly, spending a small portion of time on guard duty and the majority of his time cultivating the great development technique and refining mechanical puppet beasts. A month passed for Han Li. During this time, Han Li could clearly feel that he was on the verge of breaking through the first layer of the great development technique. This caused Han Li to be pleasantly surprised. With regards to Han Li's cultivation of five-element Taoist magic and the Azure Essence sword art, his aptitude toward them was shown to be inferior. However, he was able to cultivate this great development technique extremely smoothly and without the slightest difficulty, feeling as if success flowed naturally. In addition to feeling happiness, Han Li also felt awe in his heart. As for this first grade 2 mechanical puppet, after failing over 10 times, he finally refined it 2 days ago. Although it was a bit crude when compared to the puppets of the 1000 Bamboo School, and its strength was rather inferior, it caused Han Li to beam with happiness. After preparing materials brought to him by other cultivators, he started refining them in great quantity. But today, just as Han Li was sitting in meditation in a quiet room, he heard an extremely sharp whistle from the outside. Then people loudly yelled, "Not good! The Devil Dao is attacking! Prepare to fight!" Han Li's heart trembled. His expression became solemn as he left the quiet room. At this moment, the 7 sect cultivators who were originally meditating and resting in the cave solemnly walked out just as Han Li had. After they mutually looked at each other, they walked out of the cave dwelling one after another. The Masked Moon Sect's late foundation establishment, Xuan Yue and Spirit Beast Mountains Lu Tianmeng, were expressionlessly floating underneath the offensive formations and looked up from the Great Canyon. Over 10 cultivators who were on duty stood behind him with anxious and frightened expressions. But after they saw Han Li and the others coming to support them, they became far more calm. Han Li followed Xuan Yue's gaze and looked up from the Great Canyon. As expected, there were traces of enemies, about 20 or 30 assailants. However, Han Li clearly understood that since the enemy had dared perform a raid from such a distance, it was likely that they were all at late foundation establishment. They wouldn't have brought any Qi condensation disciples to weigh them down. Thus, in terms of strength, they were absolutely weak in comparison. This battle was not likely to go very well. Chapter 266, Fierce Battle. Han Li's side had 9 foundation establishment cultivators and over 60 Qi condensation disciples. Although they were a bit weaker than the opposition, they had the 4 fiend formation, so it wasn't as if they were completely defenseless. As a result, Xuan Yue called out, having Han Li and the other cultivators hide near the 4 fiend formations and observe the enemy's movements. At this moment, Han Li was able to take a distinct look at the Devil Dao attackers. They were all wearing either red or yellow robes. It seemed they were cultivators from 2 sects. Standing at the forefront were an ordinary-looking red-robed young woman and an old yellow-robed man who appeared to be 60 to 70 years old. Their cultivation wasn't particularly special, one being at early foundation establishment and the other at late foundation establishment. They were talking to each other with slight smiles on their faces. "Be careful. These people are from the Devil Flame Sect and the Heavenly Fiend Sect." Lu Tianmeng, being the only one who had experienced multiple encounters with the 6 Devil Dao sects, said this to the other cultivators with great caution, as if he felt great fear towards the people from these 2 sects. When the Han Li and the other cultivators heard this, their expressions naturally grew increasingly serious. At this moment, the young red-clothed woman stopped chatting, turned her head, and insipidly said a few words. Because Han Li and the others were too far away, they weren't able to hear very clearly what she said, but her words made the red-robed cultivators behind the young woman move forward before slowly flying down, toward the canyon's 4 offensive formations. At this moment, the yellow-robed old man also silently waved his hand, and his yellow-robed cultivators became streaks of yellow light that headed toward the 4 fiend formation. Within the formation, Han Li and the others unknowingly held their breaths and impatiently revealed their magic tools. These yellow-robed cultivators naturally didn't foolishly charge straight into the formation. Instead, they stopped about 100 meters away from the four fiend formation. Then, magic tools flew out, aggressively throwing themselves at the great formation. The collisions of the magic tools, wondrous light, and the four fiend formation's azure, red, blue, and yellow-colored restrictions released waves of thunderous explosions, causing the expressions of the seven sect cultivators underneath to slightly change. Half of you will go out to deal with those heavenly fiend cultivators. Do not let them break the great formation. The other half, be on guard against the devil flame sect cultivators. The masked moon sect's Xianxia muttered to himself for a moment before decisively giving his orders. Then a small pure white sword flew out of the formation and turned into a streak of white light, obstructing a flying saber as well as bead magic tools. Hearing those words, a team of cultivators followed Xianxia and also released several of their own magic tools, obstructing most of the opponent's offense. Han Li was naturally one of these people. With flawless proficiency, he released his golden beetle swarm blades to form a net of golden light, trapping a long azure spear magic tool. Because Han Li had chosen to battle the owner of the magic tool, who had the same level of cultivation as he did, the battle seemed extremely tense as golden light and azure streaks danced about. But in fact, Han Li was easily in control and had the time to take a look at other areas of the battlefield. The situation appeared to be handled. The cultivators at Han Li's side were mostly Qi condensation disciples. Their magic tools could not compete with their enemies. Only with the cooperation of 5 or 6 members would they barely be able to resist the attack of a single foundation establishment cultivator. But because they were underneath the protection of a great formation, these cultivators were able to dodge into the formation during a time of crisis and avoid death. As for the other foundation establishment cultivators, they naturally were the same as Han Li, each blocking a yellow-robed cultivator in a dazzling light show. So this is the strength of the 6 Devil Dao sect. Han Li felt this was a bit strange. If their enemy's strength were as such, then how could defending the Spirit Stone mines prove to be such a problem? Just as he thought this, the red-robed cultivators from the Devil Flame sect eventually arrived beside the Four Fiend formation. This caused Lu Tianming and the cultivators that had yet to act to diligently pay attention to them. A few of the younger Seven Sect cultivators were somewhat eager to act. The red-robed cultivators didn't immediately enter the fight. Instead, they stood in a strange formation. Following a command, they all took out a fiery red banner with a golden crow on a scorching sun, releasing a brilliant red light. From a single look, one could this was no ordinary object. Not good, these people are wild flame cultivators. They want to release an azure sun devil flame. Quickly block them. When Lu Tianming saw these red-robed cultivators act so calmly, he felt an ill premonition in his heart. As they stood in a battle formation and each took out a banner, he suddenly recalled an astonishing scene he witnessed from the day he fought in a great battle against the 6 sects. He couldn't help but shout with a whitened complexion. The spirit beast mountain cultivator then instantly rushed out of the formation and hastily reached for the storage pouch at his waist, immediately releasing 2 flying centipedes about a meter long. These 2 centipedes were covered in sinister black and yellow stripes and sprouted dark green translucent wings. Under Lu Tianming's hurried whistles, they charged toward the red-robed individuals with an ominous light emitting from their eyes. Upon hearing these words, although the other 7 sect cultivators that had yet to act did not know what wild flame cultivators and azure sun devil flame were, they knew that since it was able to cause their late foundation establishment captain to become bewildered, it was no small matter, so they did not hesitate to follow his orders. The other foundation establishment cultivators followed closely behind Lu Tianming and also sent their magic tools after the 2 centipedes towards the red-robed cultivators. At this moment, more than 10 wild flame cultivators were still chanting as they held the large banners without moving in the slightest, turning a blind eye to the attacking cultivators. This caused Lu Tianming and the other cultivators to grow greatly excited. The very first to arrive in front of the Devil Flame sect cultivators were one of the 2 flying centipedes. It opened its mouth and ruthlessly sprayed out dark green poisonous gas. But at this moment, something shocking had occurred. With the green poisonous gas having not yet left the huge centipede's mouth, several slender streaks of silver light flickered from its body. Its body then suddenly fell to pieces, having been cut by the streaks of light. without waiting for the Seven Sect cultivators to recover from their shock. The same scene immediately occurred to the other centipede. This caused Lu Tianmeng's expression to greatly change, and he hastily stopped moving. He then took out a small shield and placed it in front of his body. Overwhelmed with shock, the several cultivators behind him also took out defensive magic tools and defensive talismans, fearing they would meet a similar end as the centipedes. However, something even more outrageous occurred. Just as the few magic tools that had closely followed behind the centipede began their attack, an abundance of fine silver strings appeared in front of them, tightly wrapping around them without allowing the slightest of movements. The Seven Sect cultivators that had just left the Great Formation looked at each other in dismay. In a moment, they no longer knew what to do. Quickly use the spirit light technique. There are others in front of those red-robed cultivators, hidden by some sort of secret concealment art. After a flashing blue light from his eyes, a cultivator who had experienced a loss of a magic tool shouted this out with shock. These words caused the other cultivators to suddenly come to a realization. However, only Foundation establishment cultivators could use the spirit light technique. Qi condensation disciples could only helplessly watch. And Li also used the spirit light technique to look at that location. He had seen the entire previous scene and was shocked by no small amount. Now that he was reminded to use the spirit light technique, he saw several indistinct white silhouettes in front of the Devil Flame Sect cultivators that were holding the banner. These figures held a long, slender, sword-like weapon in one hand and controlled a thin silver thread in the other, restraining the magic tools. At this moment, after Lu Tianmeng and the other cultivators had discovered the white silhouettes, they did not hesitate to attack with all sorts of magic tools and magic techniques, suppressing the white silhouettes. However, those white silhouettes held on tenaciously. Regardless of what magic tool or Taoist magic was used, they seemed to cause no large injuries to the white silhouettes, as if they simply had immortal bodies. But fortunately, the white silhouettes could only use one hand to slice and the other to tangle. With a bit of careful dodging from the Seven Sect side, the silhouette's only method of attack was neutralized. "What sort of crafty thing is this?" Han Li exclaimed in great surprise. These silhouettes obviously weren't those of ordinary humans. Could they be refined sacrificial ghost spirits? As he thoughtfully pondered this, he commanded the golden blades in front of him. This careless attitude finally offended the middle-aged heavenly fiend cultivator. As the cultivator commanded the azure spear to tangle with Han Li's golden blades with a darkened face, he noiselessly patted his storage pouch. A continuously spinning white bead suddenly flew from it. After this bead charged out, it grew to the size of a room as it flew, fiercely striking toward Han Li's head. Even though Han Li wasn't paying much attention, how could he not notice such large movements from the enemy? He calmly chopped his hand through the air, and an azure sword streak several meters long flew from his hand towards the bead. The sword streak chopped against the bead and was unable to advance for the moment. Then Han Li took out his black dragon's gasp from his storage pouch. As the sword streak was on the verge of collapse, it took its place and formed a deadlock with the bead. This caused the heavenly fiend cultivator to become extremely angry, but he had no other option at the moment. "Not good." Lu Tianmeng's extremely anxious shout caused Han Li's heart to tremble. He hastily looked to the side and noticed that the red-robed cultivators had stopped chanting. At the same time, they lifted their banners into the air. The top of the banner began to faintly emit an azure flame. "So that's the Azure Sun Devil Flame." Han Li widely opened his eyes and rigidly stared at the azure flame, feeling a bit restless. Seeing the opponent finish casting their magic, Lu Tianmeng's heart completely sunk. However, he wasn't even close to breaking through the white silhouettes before him. Chapter 267, Flaunting the Power of Devil Fire. "Retreat! Everyone, retreat to the Great Formation!" Lu Tianmeng yelled in a moment of desperation after seeing the azure flames on those large flags grow thicker and thicker, then took the lead to fall back, fleeing towards the large formation behind him. Hearing this, the cultivators next to him immediately instinctively followed their captain and retreated. Xuan Yue did not hesitate and similarly ordered a retreat. However, the cultivators on Han Li's side, apart from a few cultivators who had a steady advantage and could retreat at any time, were all entangled by the opponent's ferocity and had no way of escaping. Han Li's opponent similarly mounted a ferocious offensive, attempting to contain Han Li. However, Han Li coldly laughed. After retrieving his other magic tools, he tossed out the white scale shield, forcefully blocking the opponent's attacks and easily returning to the Great Formation. The Heavenly Fiend Sect's cultivators could only bitterly watch and stop their footsteps outside of the formation. Seeing that more than half of his unit was stuck outside the formation, unable to escape, Xianxia began to fight even more fiercely, knowing in his heart that the situation was not good. But just as he wanted to go assist the other cultivators, Lu Tianmeng instantly pulled him back the moment he began to move. It's already too late. The Azure Sun Devil Fire has already been summoned, Lu Tianmeng said with an ashen expression, shaking his head. Upon hearing this, Han Li finally noticed that between the flags of the red-robed flag-bearers, azure flames had already shot out. 10 or so flame columns shot into the air, converging into a giant azure fireball tens of meters in diameter, gently floating in midair and swaying imposingly. It was incredibly eye-catching. This. After being startled, Xianxia was about to say something. However, the following movements from those red-robed cultivators immediately caused his expression to become extremely ugly. Those red-robed individuals pointed the tips of the flags at the 7 Great Sects cultivators who had been entangled outside of the formation. Instantly, the huge fireball became 10 or so smaller fireballs about a meter wide with a poo, shooting directly towards these cultivators. The speed of those azure fireballs was incredibly frightening. In the time it took to blink, they had already aggressively flown in front of the cultivators from the 7 Great Sects. Naturally, these people had long discovered the transformation of the large fireball. They all instinctively used various kinds of magic tools to receive the attacks of the azure fireballs. An extremely low number of them used a few talismans to execute Taoist magic in an attempt to shoot them down. Unfortunately, because these azure flames were the so-called Azure Sun Devil flames, they were extremely frightening. Regardless of whether it was the magic tools or the Taoist magics, as soon as they encountered the azure fireball, they were like moths in a flame, silently melting away completely. Seeing this unbelievable scene, the faces of those cultivators became as deathly pale as snow. Before they could think carefully about it, 10 or so fireballs simultaneously slammed into them. The protective barriers and similar magic spells were all completely destroyed upon contact. Furthermore, their bodies instantly became reduced to nothing under the demonic fire, not even leaving a single trace behind. After seeing this massacre, how could the remaining cultivators who had not been hit dare to hesitate at all? Either they had been gravely wounded by the Heavenly Fiend Sect cultivators, or they simply dropped the tangled-up magic tools, directly fleeing towards the Great Formation. However, 2 or 3 people panicked, and they immediately died under their opponent's magic tools. In this way, the 7 Great Sects cultivators defending the Spirit Stone mine had suffered the deaths of nearly 10 Qi condensation disciples and 1 Foundation establishment cultivator. As soon as they brushed against the enemy, their losses were very great. However, the Azure Sun Devil Flames might was not limited to this. Under the guidance of the red-robed cultivators, those azure fireballs became one entity once again, directly becoming a sea of flames that rushed towards the 4 Fiend formation. At this moment, the expressions on the faces of the ones hiding inside the formation drastically changed, and a fear spread through all of the cultivators. Seeing this, Xianxia wrinkled his brow and directly asked Lu Tianmeng, "Senior Marshal Brother Lu, what's going on with these azure flames? How can Foundation establishment cultivators release such frightening true fire? This great formation's restriction ability should be able to block the attack of the flames, right?" Lu Tianmeng couldn't help but begin to bitterly laugh after hearing the other person's string of questions. However, upon seeing that all the other cultivators were attentively watching him, he could only helplessly explain. "To tell the truth to you all, when Lu was battling in the warfront, I only occasionally witnessed this Azure Sun Devil Flame's fearfulness. As for whether or not it can break the 4 Fiend formation, I have no way of guessing. Only I heard afterwards from a senior that this kind of demonic fire cannot be carelessly released. Not only are these wild flame cultivators required to cultivate in this kind of Azure Sun Devil Flame technique, every time they release it they pay a price in lowering their own cultivation bases. That's why it's so difficult to defend against." These words from Lu Tianmeng caused Xianxia and the other cultivators to glance at each other, revealing dispirited expressions. At this time, the fierce azure flames finally slammed into the 4-colored restrictions of the Great Formation. A low rumbling sound, like an explosion, sounded out, immediately attracting the attention of all the cultivators present. They saw that the azure waves incessantly slammed against the four-colored light barrier, wave after wave, causing the light barrier to ripple non-stop. However, in the end it blocked these frightening demonic flames, causing the seven sects cultivators in the formation to let out a sigh of relief. However, Han Li and the others did not relax for long before they were on edge once again. That was because as time went on, the four-colored light barrier was already slowly dimming under the repeated onslaught of the vicious azure flames. Clearly, this was a sign that the great formation was about to shatter. And although those red-clothed people were also drenched with sweat, waving their large flags, they definitely had no problem in holding out for a while. All of the cultivators inside the formation now began to furiously rack their brains on ways to retreat and get out of there. Based on the circumstances of the other spirit stone mines that had been ambushed, although the seven sects cultivators who fell into the hands of the Devil Dao were not immediately killed, they would be immediately escorted to the enemy. It was unknown what the Devil Dao were planning to do with their hostages. However, the hatred built up between the seven sects and the six Devil Dao sects after their consecutive battles could be likened to a deep sea. How could either side treat their hostages well? This concern was especially made worse since the opponent often practiced the inhumane method of extracting one's soul. This caused the seven sects cultivators to feel even more uneasy. Thus, unless there was no other way out, no one would bring up the matter of surrender. I know of a tunnel directly leading to a location around 10 miles away. That should be enough for us to escape alive. The elder Yu Xing, who had been standing guard here for 10 or so years, suddenly said with a peaceful expression. Like a large boulder creating huge waves, these words instantly shocked Xuan Yue and the other cultivators, then exciting them immediately afterwards. Martial Brother Yu, is this really true? Great, now we can finally escape. We're saved. The seven sects cultivators who were originally panicking had suddenly become much more lively and were unable to contain their joy. Han Li was also rather happy. After all, he truly had no way to deal with those Azure Sun Devil flames. Even if he were to go all out, he wouldn't know where to start. Xuan Yue and Lu Tianmeng restrained the excitement in their hearts, and after confirming again the veracity of the tunnel from Yu Xing's mouth, hesitated for a moment before issuing the order to retreat. As for the Spirit Stone mine, they wouldn't have to worry about it. At most, the opponents would destroy the tunnel entrance, halting the production of spirit stones. The Devil Dao cultivators wouldn't even take a few spirit stones from the mine. Even the mortals who worked the mines wouldn't normally be injured in the battle. Thus, all they needed to do was make themselves scarce and slip away. Under Yu Xing's lead, Han Li and the other 50 or so cultivators guarding the mine entered a certain underground tunnel in the spirit stone mine. However, just when they entered the underground tunnel, everyone felt the entire canyon tremble for a moment. The four-fiend formation has been broken through, Xuan Yue shouted expressionlessly. Instantly, the cultivators sped up their footsteps even more. The inside of the tunnel was lit up by the many moonlight stones in the cultivators' hands. One could tell from the potholed walls of the tunnel that it was man-made, causing all of the cultivators to feel somewhat shocked. Based on Yu Xing's brief overview, this tunnel was originally an extremely long spirit stone vein. It had been carved out by the miners as they progressed along the vein, harvesting the spirit stones. It eventually led to another exit. Thankfully, this tunnel existed and Yu Xing remembered it. Otherwise, they really would have had nowhere to escape today. These words caused the other cultivators to repeatedly nod their heads in agreement. But just at this moment, the tunnel suddenly began to shake violently. After a few loud rumbles, it began to slowly fall apart. Countless clumps of dirt and huge stones rained on the frightened cultivators, directly burying them. The entire underground world became pitch black once again. After many hours, at a certain stone wall in a naturally occurring underground cave, a large hole suddenly opened up with a huala. Next, a lizard-like puppet beast rushed out of the hole, stretching its head to size up its surroundings. It then jumped back into the hole. After the time it takes to cook a meal, the lizard mechanical beast jumped out again from the stone wall. Only this time a person crawled out as well, closely following behind. This was none other than Han Li, who had encountered the collapse yet managed to survive the disaster. Han Li stood up and glanced at the surroundings, his face revealing a joyful expression. He had just received a new lease on life. Chapter 268, White Spider. Han Li was currently in a stalactite cave open from all sides. Although he did not know how big it truly was, it absolutely couldn't have been small. After Han Li took a look in every direction with a moonlight stone in hand, he had come to that conclusion. In the split second when the tunnel collapsed into dirt and falling stones, Han Li quickly flew and activated his protective barrier. As a result, although he was deeply buried underneath the earth from the series of tremors, he still had the leeway to take deep breaths and move slowly. However, the earth tremors were too great, and Han Li no longer knew where he was, incapable of identifying his direction. He had no choice but to release several lizard puppet beasts he had on hand and have them simultaneously dig in different directions, hoping to find a way out. At this moment, he felt great regret for not having previously learned the earth evasion technique. If he had, he could just smoothly shuttle through the earth. Now, he could only have his puppet beasts move forward as he slowly crawled. As for using magic tools to open a path, Han Li completely rejected it as soon as he thought of it. Under the current circumstances, negligently squandering magic power was not wise, especially without knowing a clear route. Furthermore, using magic tools while underneath the earth was truly far too dangerous. With a single mistake, he would be caught in another collapse. As such, Han Li first controlled several puppets and scouted everything within a certain range once through, before choosing the mostly likely route to escape from. Like this, after many hours of dull crawling, he eventually arrived at this mysterious stalactite cave. This caused Han Li's completely taut heart to thoroughly relax. The feeling of surviving a calamity was truly wonderful. Han Li turned his head to look at the hole he just crawled out of. He was certain there were others who had also managed to preserve their life while trapped underneath the collapsed tunnel, but whether or not they were able to find a path to life was hard to say. Because they were trapped in an airtight area, even if they were Foundation establishment cultivators, they wouldn't last for very long. Qi condensation disciples were even less likely to survive. However, while Han Li was rejoicing in his fortune, he felt a bit puzzled. How could it be that soon after they entered the tunnel would collapse from an earthquake? Could it be the Devil Dao had arranged ghosts to cause this? Han Li felt that this guess was most likely true. On the surface, the Devil Dao cultivators had just greatly damaged the Spirit Stone mine's opening, using magic tools to completely smash the cave within to pieces. High up above the Spirit Stone mine, yellow-robed old man was facing the red-robed young woman, regretfully saying, "Junior Marshal Sister Lion, you are treating this small problem greatly. Just to get a few stray dogs, you used an earth-shaking talisman, an extremely rare mid-grade talisman. Humph, to run away from me, Lion Feihua, how could it be so easy? Although rooting out this Spirit Stone mine happened to be just an insignificant mission, to truly let them run away so easily makes me feel ill at ease." The red-robed young woman slanted her mouth, saying this without concern. When the yellow-robed man heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Using this to justify wasting a rare talisman, it was truly too ridiculous. But even so, she was the Devil Flame Sect Master's only daughter. He was only a Heavenly Fiend Sect enforcer. He should just mind his own business. With this thought, the old man shut his mouth and kept quiet. Not long after, the Spirit Stone mine was completely destroyed by the Devil Dao cultivators. They flew away, eventually flying off into the horizon. After a day, a huge Seven Sects medicine cultivation yard, hidden rather far from this place, was raided by the same group. They stole all the medicinal herbs that could be used and cleanly set the saplings ablaze with Azure Sun Devil Fire. This matter immediately seized the hearts of the Seven Sects upper echelon. Compared to the Spirit Stone mine Han Li had guarded, it was insignificant. By using only a bit of time, the mine would be restored. However, the plundered and burned spiritual herbs needed several tens of years to grow again. The Seven Sects upper echelon furiously dispatched experts to pursue and kill them. But who would have thought that the enemy would meet with reinforcements, or that the Seven Sects would suffer a small loss from the ambush? With such continuous losses, the Seven Sects naturally wouldn't submit to humiliation. After recovering a bit of strength, they took the initiative to begin a second wave of large-scale battles, once more opening another prelude. Underground, Han Li wrinkled his brow. He finally identified the direction of the wind within the cave. He had his puppet beasts find the path forward as he crawled after them. After passing through several tens of caverns, the stalactite caves became larger and larger. The largest cavern could fit over 100 people without problem. The further he moved, the stronger the wind flow, which caused Han Li to be a bit more at ease. After all, with wind, there would be an opening to the surface. Just as Han Li entered a new cavern, he ran into 6 or 7 people. They were Yuan Le, Lu Tianfeng, and other cultivators. Unexpectedly, Zhang Wu was there as well. When they saw Han Li alongside 2 puppet beasts, they blankly stared with surprise. But soon after, as Xuanyi smiled and thought of saying something, a mournful scream came from the other direction, causing everyone's expression to change, revealing fright. Without inquiring anything from Han Li, Xuanyi and Lu Tianmeng looked at each other and immediately followed the scream with hastened steps. No one dared to be negligent, applying all sorts of defensive magic techniques and magic tools as a precaution. When Han Li saw this, he hesitated for a moment. In the end, he took out his white scale shield and slowly followed. However, he didn't use a defensive magic technique. This way, he would be able to use both the Imperial flight technique and soft body movements. He always believed that in narrow quarters, speed was more important than defense. After they passed through 3 or 4 large caverns, they arrived at a huge stalactite cave and suddenly saw a frightful scene before them. At the center of the cavern, a sparkling crystal white spider over 10 meters large was using its huge sharp teeth to bite at a badly mutilated corpse. The corpse was wearing white clothes, clearly revealing its former identity as a masked Moon Sect disciple who had managed to flee from being buried alive. Near the corpse, there were 3 or 4 thoroughly worn-out magic tools. What was most noticeable was the huge spirit stone vein behind the spider. Surrounding it was an extremely ancient hexagonal transportation formation. To the side of the transportation formation, there was a rainbow-colored skeleton sitting cross-legged in meditation, levitating a meter into the air. Its hand was grasping a lustrous blue command medallion that was radiating faintly. "What is this?" After a chi condensation cultivator swallowed his spit, he dryly asked. No one knew if he was asking about this monstrous spider, the transportation formation, or the skeleton with the command medallion. Naturally, no one answered. Perhaps it was because this person's voice had alarmed the spider, but the monster suddenly stopped gnawing. It raised its head and glared at the party that had invaded its cavern with an ice-cold gaze. This caused Han Li's and the other cultivators' hearts to tremble as they hastily prepared to fight. But a moment after this monster took a glance, it lowered its head and continued to gnaw at the corpse, turning a blind eye to the crowd of people. This caused everyone to look at each other in dismay. Die. When a masked Moon Sect cultivator saw his fellow sect member had died at the jaws of this spider, he felt grieved from his death and raised his hand, fiercely throwing a flaming dart magic tool toward the spider. This caused Lu Tianmeng and the other experienced people to jump in fright, inwardly cursing this person's imprudence. Peng, the clear sound rang out as the flying dart struck the head of the spider, which hadn't attempted to dodge in the slightest. Unexpectedly, it bounced back. Not the slightest trace of damage could be seen on the insect beast. Furthermore, the point of the dart had become slightly bent. The other cultivators' eyes nearly dropped from their sockets. This spider's outer carapace was actually this hard. It was far too ridiculous. Everyone attack. Xuanyi fiercely glanced at that rash fellow sect member and had no better option than to call for everyone to simultaneously attack. This was because that spider had already stopped eating and was slowly walking towards them. After these words were said, over 10 magic tools flew out at the same time. They all struck the huge spider with all sorts of divine powers. Han Li had also sent out his golden blades. At this moment, underneath the dazzling barrage of attacks, the spider's body had become completely covered by strong light, almost as if it had been instantly killed by those attacks. But after the sounds of clatter were heard, the brilliance of the magic tools' attack had dimmed. 5 or 6 lower-grade magic tools even completely lost their spiritual properties, falling to the ground. When Han Li and the other cultivators saw this, they turned pale with fright. They each took the same action, drawing their gazes to their magic tools. In the end, the top-grade magic tools were still in good condition. However, the high-grade magic tools suffered heavy damage. As for the lower-grade magic tools, they fell to the floor. Once again, the slightest trace of damage couldn't be seen on the white spider, which continued to leisurely crawl towards them. Withdraw. After Li Tianmeng and Xuanyi looked at each other, they both happened to shout the same word. Although they were a bit curious about the transportation formation and the command medallion, the price to kill that demonic monster was far too high. Furthermore, the return to the surface was far more important. But during this time, the white spider opened its mouth, and a shining white liquid sprayed out everywhere. After seeing the fearsomeness of this monster, who dared to be so stupid as to touch this unknown liquid, everyone similarly flashed to either side. Not good. Han Li came to a realization after thinking of something and couldn't help but cry out. The other cultivators were slightly startled. They hadn't fully realized what just happened. The liquid suddenly turning into a huge net. The spider then pounced at the cave opening and stood on the web. Much to their surprise, it tightly sealed the entrance they had just used to enter. The other cultivators' expressions changed. At this moment, they discovered that this stalactite cave seemed to only have one exit. Chapter 269, Blood Red. Could it be it wishes to eliminate us in one stroke? Zhang Wu asked with a white complexion. Humph. Xuan Yue didn't speak and raised his hand instead. 7 to 8 fireballs flew from his hand, shooting toward the dense spiderweb. Peng peng, the spiderweb was left completely intact. Not even the slightest sign of a burn could be seen. At this moment, the others weren't surprised. They had clearly anticipated that this spiderweb wasn't so fragile. During this moment, the white spider slightly bent its legs, and with ferocious power, it pounced straight toward Xuan Yue's direction with its entire body. Xuan Yue's expression darkened. He pressed a yellow talisman against the ground, and immediately after, it noiselessly dissolved into floor. Subsequently, a huge stone spike sharply rose not far away, precisely hitting the abdomen of the spider as it leaped in midair. The spider was rigidly pinned to the roof of the cavern, incapable of moving for the time being. Good. When Lu Tianming saw this, he loudly shouted and revealed an expression of happiness. Then he threw out a dark green bag, with the bag's opening pointed at the spider at the ceiling, revealing faint, warm light. At this moment, the spider trapped at the cavern's ceiling started hissing. It drew its legs towards its abdomen and held the stone spike tightly. Then it fiercely exerted force. The sounds of crashing stones were heard. The tip of the stone spike had actually been easily crushed into countless falling stones. After recovering its freedom, the demonic beast jumped down. When it had broken the stone spike's tip, its small eyes flickered with green light as if it were angered. It lowered its body and then straightened it. It seemed to want to pounce toward the cultivators once again. But at this moment, the warm light rushed out from the bag and precisely swept away the spider as it was midair. Then, as quick as lightning, the light returned, with it the spider that had unexpectedly shrunk as it was collected into the bag. Han Li and the others at the side were startled. Such a seemingly ferocious spider had actually been so easily captured alive. This was truly hard to imagine. Lu Tianming also wore an expression of pleasant surprise. Although the might of his sun and moon pouch was quite considerable, it had already been used many times to collect a large number of demonic beasts. Even so, it was still able to smoothly capture this spider, which caused him to be greatly surprised. Feelings of ecstasy then began to rise in his heart. If he could tame such a demonic beast, wouldn't his power increase by several times? With this thought, although Lu Tianming had regained his calm, his happiness was displayed on his brow. He impatiently waved at the green bag, and it slowly flew back under everyone's gazes. The other cultivators naturally knew what such a live demonic beast meant to a member of Spirit Beast Mountain. They couldn't help but display an expression of envy. However, just as this expression was revealed, that flying bag suddenly stopped in midair and moved no more. Lu Tianming grew frightened and hastily attempted to retrieve his bag by forcefully using more magic power. However, after the bag swayed several more times, it still stopped in midair. Everyone watching from the side knew something was amiss. They hastily went on guard. The surface of the leather bag suddenly became bumpy. It seemed that demonic beast was causing these oddities from within the bag. These strange occurrences continued for a short moment before disappearing, but soon after, it suddenly began to swell, and with a loud bang as the bag exploded into pieces. The white spider had actually forcibly destroyed the magic tool and restored its original size. After once again escaping constraint, the demonic beast clearly entered a craze. Its translucent pure white body gradually turned red and began to shoot off fearful blood-red rays of light. It began grinding its mouthful of sharp teeth, releasing fearful crackling noises. When Lu Tianming and the others saw this, they all solemnly drew back several steps, planning to use explosions from magic tools to increase the distance between them. However, the blood-red spider cut forward with its many legs and charged toward the two cultivators furthest away as fast as lightning. After seeing only 2 streaks of white light flash by and hearing poo-poo, the two cultivators' defensive barriers had been destroyed in a single strike, their bodies severed in two, meeting a violent end. Among these two was unexpectedly that ugly man Zhang Wu. Unfortunately, he had believed he was safer as he was farther away. After seeing the two cultivators, deaths along with the spider's lightning-fast movements, the others that had scattered the farthest turned pale with fright and feared they would follow the pair's footsteps. However, they were too late. The demonic beast's body had already flashed and turned into a streak of blood-red light, shooting toward the saber transformation cultivator. This cultivator's face became deathly pale. He grit his teeth, shooting two black throwing knives at the approaching spider. However, the spider opened its mouth, and shining white liquid shot out toward the throwing knives, causing the throwing knives to lose their magic power and fall to the floor. Then it leaped up with its huge body and bit off the head of the saber transformation cultivator. The headless corpse spouted out blood like a fountain, causing those who saw it to become aghast. The others, Han Li included, no longer hesitated and immediately sent talismans and magic tools to smash its head. However, even since the spider's body turned blood red, it became as fast as the wind. Within this narrow cavern, the magic tools and magic techniques simply couldn't follow its nimble movements. A short moment later, another two cultivators met their violent end underneath its fierce teeth. Although one of them had timely used a colored scarf to obstruct its advance, in the blink of an eye, the spider shredded through the scarf and killed him. This spider's legs and fierce teeth were truly sharp. Their hardness was absolutely that of a top-grade magic tool or higher. At this moment, only Lu Tianmeng, Xuan Yue, and Han Li had remained. The trio's complexion had become ashen with extreme fear and anger. If they were in an open area, then these cultivators wouldn't have died so easily. After all, with flying magic tools, they definitely would have lasted longer. Bang! The spider flashed to the side of Lu Tianmeng. As it attempted to cleave his body in two through his protective barrier, a black object appeared to obstruct it. This flat and round object appeared to be a small shield, but under careful observation its surface seemed to have cracks. It was actually a miraculously strange turtle shell. Apart from a shallow mark that remained from the strike, it was completely intact. It was truly astonishing. Seeing it had no effect, the huge spider immediately gave up on Lu Tianmeng and flashed with red light, arriving at Han Li's side with its jaws open. However, Han Li's cold expression shook several times. His body suddenly became vague and immediately disappeared. He then appeared over 20 meters away. This caused the demonic beast to unexpectedly stay still from surprise. During this delay, Xuan Yue took out a small yellow cup and arrived next to the spider. After the small cup flashed with yellow light and expanded, Xuan Yue slapped it underneath, trapping it once again. Afterwards, Han Li expanded his black dragon's grasp to its greatest size and cautiously hovered over the cup, fearing another escape from the demonic beast. You two be at ease. My heaven-shrouding cup was refined from copper essence, a material used to refine magic treasures. It absolutely wouldn't be able to escape. After Xuan Yue's expression relaxed, he explained this to Han Li and Lu Tianmeng. Hearing this, Han Li's expression relaxed, and he retrieved his black dragon's grasp. It seemed he was truly at ease. However, Lu Tianmeng walked to the front of the copper cup and took a few looks at it before muttering to himself and shaking his head with worry, saying, "This won't do. I feel unassured. Continue using your cup to trap the beast and give me time to prepare a magic treasure and thoroughly kill this monster." When Xuan Yue heard this, he wrinkled his brow, but he didn't say anything and followed along. Han Li then looked at the transportation formation and the skeleton's command medallion. After a moment of thought, he walked to the side and sat cross-legged in meditation, leaving the previous matter up to the other two. At this moment, Lu Tianmeng took out a treasure talisman flashing with azure light. He pressed it between his palms and slowly filled it with spiritual power. It was obvious that a late foundation establishment could use a treasure talisman quickly without having to charge it with power. A short moment later, he separated his hands, and an exquisite small rod shot forth and revolved around his head. "Are you ready? I'm going to release the demonic beast." When Xuan Yue saw this, he asked this with concern as he controlled the small cup. "I'm ready. You both can die at ease. That greater displacement medallion is mine." Lu Tianmeng widely opened his eyes, suddenly revealing a sinister appearance. After this large shout, the tip of the short rod released innumerable rays of light. In a flash, one rod became two, two became four, and four became eight. In the blink of an eye, over several hundred similar small rods had appeared. Each of the small rods released a small, buzzing rumble. Then, under Lu Tianmeng's control, the majority of the rods charged toward Xuan Yue in a dense formation, while a small portion went toward Han Li as he was meditating cross-legged. When Han Li saw this, his expression slightly changed. He didn't dare to clench the item in his hand and rigidly stared at the approaching talisman treasures. Xuan Yue's expression was dull, as if he were turning a blind eye to this crisis. Seeing the pair's expression, Lu Tianming's proud expression froze. As he shouted, "Not good!" In his mind, he thought to take out the tortoise shell. However, behind him, the sound of the ground rupturing came from behind him. Then, a streak of red light struck at his side. Suddenly, Lu Tianming's body fell to the ground in two pieces. Right after, the red light leaped back a certain distance away and stopped. It was unexpected, the blood-red spider that had escaped its trap at an unknown time. Chapter 270 Beheading. Chapter 270 Beheading. Once Lu Tianming had died, the magic power supporting the several hundred small rods disappeared. In an instant, they dissolved into specks of azure light and converged together, forming a treasure talisman that gently fell to the floor. At this moment, all that was left was Han Li, Xuan Yi, and the blood-red spider. Xuan Yi expressionlessly stared at Han Li and didn't make any movements. Han Li then looked at the blood-red spider and then looked at Xuan Yi. He then silently raised his hand and brought out his white scale shield. Simultaneously, 8 streaks of white light appeared at his side. They were revealed to be Han Li's puppet beasts. Xuan Yi's expression became slightly moved as he raised his hand to recall the small yellow cup. He insipidly said, "I truly did not think that Junior Marshal Han Li was actually an expert in puppet techniques. However, it seems you haven't cultivated it to perfection. Do you think with so few puppets, you could be considered my opponent?" When Han Li heard this, his expression didn't change. He only coldly asked, "Did you release the spider intentionally?" "Correct." Xuan Yi bluntly acknowledged this. Then he flipped his hand and summoned a red muslin cloak. "Are you not worried about overreaching yourself and allowing yourself to die to this demonic beast?" Han Li coldly laughed after he licked his dry lips. Me die, against a mere grade 4 demonic beast with a bit of toughness and brute strength," Xuan Yi mockingly said. His face was filled with disdain and contempt. "Regardless, you should go and properly play with that crystal spider. Hope you'll be able to preserve your life." With that said, he covered his body with the muslin cloak. Although he was still there, all the sense from his body completely disappeared. Han Li was slightly surprised. He couldn't help but look at that muslin cloak several times. At this moment, Xuan Yi slowly retreated to a corner of the cavern with a slight smile on his face. It seemed he didn't want to be involved at all. Han Li's thoughts whirled in his mind several times and guessed several uses of that muslin cloak. His complexion couldn't help but change, and he hastily looked at the spider. After seeing the blood-red spider stare at him with an ominous glint, he heard the sound of crackling come from its fierce teeth. It seemed he had already become its hunting target. After Han Li pondered for a short moment, his body flashed as he rushed toward the corner Xuan Yi was resting. But when the blood spider saw Han Li move, its blood-red light brilliantly shined, and it charged towards Han Li. However, he had already prepared his puppet beasts, which opened their mouths, taking turns to shoot out light beams at the spider as it drew near. When the beams hit the red spider's body, it tumbled several times back. At this moment, it had no method to further pursue Han Li. When Xuan Yi saw Han Li approach him at great speed, his heart trembled. He was greatly fearful toward Han Li's lightning-fast movement technique. How could he let Han Li approach him so near? He reacted by tossing the small cup in his hand towards Han Li. Then radiance shot forth from his body. A set of fire-red leather armor appeared on his body. Having lost its usefulness, the muslin cloak had been put away. When Han Li saw the giant cup barrier approach him, he waved his hand, causing a small mirror to appear in his hand. At the same time, a brilliant azure mist shot forth and immediately turned the huge cup back to its original size, halting it in midair. "Azure stasis mirror," Xuan Yi shouted in alarm. This was a famous top-grade magic tool from his own sect. How could he not know of it? Suddenly, Xuan Yi panicked and moved erratically. He originally believed this heaven-shrouding cup would have bought him some time. However, it hadn't slowed down Han Li's charge in the slightest. How could he not be in a fluster? Fortunately, he was still over 30 meters away. Xuan Yi took out an ice storm technique talisman and threw it out. It immediately turned into a dense barrage of ice spikes. He assumed that since Han Li would use his white scale shield to defend, he would slow down his movements, giving Xuan Li enough time to take out an impressive magic tool. When Han Li saw the barrage of ice spikes, a cold light flashed through his eyes, but he inconceivable waved his hand, retrieving the small shield into his storage pouch. At the same time, he suddenly increased his speed. His body became distorted in incomprehensible transformations and charged straight through the icicle barrage without the slightest of injury. When Xianxia saw this, his calm expression thoroughly disappeared, his complexion becoming incomparably pale. In the blink of an eye, Han Li had already appeared in front of him. Lacking the time to use any magic tools, he could only madly pour the entirety of his spiritual power into his fiery armor and hope the defensive power of this top-grade defensive magic tool was enough to save him from the crisis before his eyes. Seeing the dazzling radiance released from his opponent's armor, murderous intent rushed forth from Han Li's eyes. He opened his mouth, and a black needle that had been prepared long ago shot out from his mouth when it was least expected, producing an extremely grim hiss as it pierced the air. It flew toward the opponent's armor with extreme speed, creating a world-shakingly loud clap upon impact. A huge streak of azure sword chi then appeared from thin air, and with a flash, Han Li was already standing behind Xianxia. Xianxia blankly stood at his original location. At the pit of his stomach, a fist-sized hole had appeared on his armor, causing the armor's spiritual chi to disappear, turning the armor to scrap metal. Then, without warning, his head suddenly fell to the floor. After Han Li had suddenly broken his armor, he used an azure essence sword streak to immediately behead him. Naturally, Han Li had already taken his storage pouch as he passed by. Han Li looked at the storage pouch in his hand and felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. He was unexpectedly able to kill a late Foundation establishment cultivator. He had trouble believing he had just done so. However, Han Li clearly understood that the reason why he was able to kill Xianxia was because he had caught him off guard, and because Xianxia was restricted by the narrow terrain. If it were a normal high-level battle between cultivators, Xianxia absolutely wouldn't have given him the opportunity to approach. Separated by a distance of over 100 meters, and with the assistance of flying magic tools, Xianxia wouldn't be slower than Han Li's extremely limited movement technique and could move about as he wished. In order to destroy this person's armor, Han Li had to consume a single-use explosive magic tool refined from the fledgling horn of the inky flood dragon. It had been mutually destroyed along with the opponent's armor. When this fledgling horn was refined, the magic tool shop owner continuously felt regret. If the inky flood dragon had grown another 20 to 30 years, its horn could have been refined into an extremely powerful magic tool and wouldn't need to produce such a fragile consumable magic tool. But from what happened today, by allowing him to kill a late Foundation establishment cultivator, this item was truly worthwhile. After Han Li put away the azure stasis mirror and the small cup, a series of explosions suddenly appeared from behind him. This caused him to stop and instinctively react, patting his storage pouch. Several Grade 2 puppet beasts flew out from his pouch and blocked the blood spider's advance. A few seconds later, the puppets had been cut and gnawed to pieces. At this moment, the blood spider lowered its head and once again charged towards Han Li. Han Li raised his hand and sent forth his black dragon's grasp in its greatest size, stopping the huge spider in midair. Soon after, light beam attacks from his puppet beasts continuously shot at the demonic beast's blood-red body. It was eventually suppressed to the point where it was incapable of moving forward. In a moment of desperation, the blood-red spider sprayed out several spider webs from its mouth. Fortunately, Han Li had already seen the demonic beast use this before, and his body immediately flashed, avoiding it. As for the puppet beasts, although they weren't able to avoid being tangled in the spider's threads in the slightest, Han Li was able to instantly take the tangled ones into his storage pouch and exchange them for fresh puppets. The puppets' attack continued without the slightest of delay. Han Li immediately thought of using a talisman treasure, but couldn't help but dispel the idea against this opponent. After all, using protective barriers and magic tools was unwise and would result in him being trapped by the spider's webs. With no better choice, Han Li let out a sigh and could only maintain his attacks against the spider. He didn't dare to relax in the slightest. After a quarter hour, it turned out as Han Li had predicted. The blood-red spider's body gradually lost its color, its shell beginning to show bumps. It was clear that this demonic beast's true essence was almost exhausted, rendering it incapable of using spiritual power to reinforce its body to withstand the attacks. When Han Li's face revealed a slight smile, the spider seemed to realize the situation was far from good and attempted to flee Han Li's offensive entrapment several times. As it attempted to leap to the cavern's exit, it was swiftly suppressed and pushed back by a burst of the puppet's light beams. In the end, It was actually restrained to one spot by Han Li's ever-changing entrapment. When the entirety of the demonic beast's true essence had been exhausted, it could only shrink into a ball without any power to counterattack. Han Li then took out the incomparably sharp silver-pointed sword and took several steps forward, beheading the spider. As expected, although the beast's external shell was hard, without any magic power to reinforce its body, its defenses were easily sliced through by the sword. Han Li finally sat down on the floor, exhausted. He remained silent for half a day. After a long while, he took a look at the dead cultivators lying in every direction and felt for the first time that the lives of cultivators were fragile. This caused him to feel sorrow in his heart. Would he also meet his end at the hands of another cultivator or end up in the stomach of a demonic beast one day? After he fully rested, Han Li first gathered the small rod treasure talisman and then searched through the dead cultivator's storage pouches. Finally, he approached the transportation formation with caution. His gaze continuously flickered between the rainbow skeleton and command medallion. Greater displacement medallion, that was what Lu Tianfeng called it, Han Li thought as he sunk into contemplation. Chapter 271, The Greater Displacement Medallion and an Ancient Transportation Formation. Greater Displacement Medallion. Han Li had never heard of this name before. Seeing that Lu Tianmeng and Xuan Yue had acted to eliminate all others, this object was obviously precious. However, facing the strange appearance of the rainbow skeleton, Han Li didn't dare to rashly act. He took out his golden blades and carefully touched the skeleton with it. Seeing that nothing happened, he felt reassured and walked closer, attentively sizing up the command medallion. The blue luster of the command medallion faintly released twinkling lights similar to gems. The medallion was engraved with simple decorative designs and an ancient character. It was clearly an object of ancient origin. As for other areas, Han Li didn't find anything noteworthy. The spiritual power contained within wasn't very large either. Han Li pondered for a moment and used his golden blade to lightly pick at it, causing the command medallion to easily fall from the hand. After picking it up with his hand, he noticed that it wasn't made of metal as he had imagined. It was both flexible and hard. It seemed to have been refined from wood. After Han Li fiddled with it for a moment, he attempted to inject it with a bit of spiritual power. But then a huge suction force came from the command medallion, taking a great amount of spiritual power away from his body. Fearful, Han Li cut off the spiritual power connection without delay, causing the suction force to disappear. Having suffered, Han Li didn't dare to recklessly attempt it again and carefully put the command medallion away in his storage pouch. Then he looked at the several layers of the mysterious transportation formation. He felt very curious regarding where the transportation formation went. Naturally, Han Li didn't attempt to recklessly use it. Furthermore, even if he truly had such idiotic thoughts, he would be incapable of acting upon them. This was because a corner of the transportation formation had already been damaged. Although the damage was not much, it was sufficient to cause the transportation formation to be inoperable. Han Li blinked his eyes and suddenly took out a jade slip. He started to record the transportation formation's appearance and decorative design, preparing to ask others about it and see if he could restore the transportation method. He was greatly looking forward to this. After doing all of this, Han Li looked around the huge cavern to see if there was anything he had missed. As a result, behind a core stone pillar, he had discovered two sparkling translucent eggs, each about the size of a fist. When Han Li saw this, he was pleasantly surprised. Without guessing, he already knew they were the eggs of the spider demonic beast. Having personally experienced that spider demonic beast's ferocity, how could Han Li miss this opportunity? He immediately looked for a leather pouch that specialized in holding spiritual beasts from a spirit beast mountain cultivator's storage pouch. Then he carefully put the spider eggs into the bag and then stuffed the bag into his pocket. With this harvest, Han Li looked around even more attentively, but unfortunately he found nothing else. However, Han Li didn't mind, as he was perfectly content with his spoils. He returned to the white spider's corpse and dismembered it with no trace of politeness, stuffing the limbs into his storage pouch. Then he took Xuan Yue, Lu Tianmeng and the other cultivators' corpses and used fireballs to turn them into ashes, burying them there. When Han Li looked at the rainbow skeleton, Han Li threw a few fireballs at it in passing, intending to turn it to ash. But as a result, the skeleton fused with the inferno and condensed into 7 to 8 small rainbow pearls. This greatly shocked Han Li, and he collected them with curiosity. Han Li then wanted to leave this place, But in order to make it so the transportation formation wasn't discovered by anyone else, he used Azure Essence sword streaks to destroy the cavern entrance as he was leaving and completely block the passage. Naturally, he also committed this place to his memory so that he could find it in the future. After that, Han Li followed the direction of the wind in the stalactite cave, finding an extremely hidden opening. He had finally returned to the surface. Because Han Li was afraid of Devil Dao cultivators wandering around in the vicinity, he didn't dare to delay and piloted his divine wind boat in the direction of the Tai Yue mountain range. 7 to 8 days later, Han Li returned to Yellow Maple Valley. After he went to report about their losses to a steward who was on duty, he remained on standby at his Immortals cave. At this moment, he knew the second wave of war had already started. Furthermore, the Seven Sects had received vigorous assistance from 2 neighboring countries at the very start of the star, and it seemed as if they were currently winning against the 6 sects. This caused the atmosphere in Yellow Maple Valley to greatly ease up. It was no longer as pessimistic as it was the beginning of the war. After returning, Han Li saw that everything inside his Immortals cave was the same as before. He relaxed, deeply breathing out. Although it could be said that returning to his sect now wasn't sensible as he was likely to be assigned to fight, any 7 sects disciple that shrank back as battle approached and used excuses to avoid being conscripted was severely punished. Light punishments took away spirit stones, heavy punishments crippled one's magic power. These things weren't tolerable in the least. Furthermore, others have told him that 7 sects had already dealt over 100 punishments of varying degrees. Also, regardless if they fled the battlefield, disciples with no assignments or had already completed their assignments were required to report back to the sect within a certain amount of time. If there weren't any reasons for not returning within the time frame, one would be judged for punishment. Naturally, consequences for blunt evasion without reporting back or fleeing to another country grew even harsher. They would be chased by a 7 sect enforcement squads for the rest of their lives until they were killed. So long as the 7 sects existed, the pursuit would never end. At this moment, Han Li was unwilling to break away from Yellow Maple Valley and flee the state of Yue. Naturally, he openly returned to obey orders. In truth, according to his deductions, how could there be a single peaceful haven in the heavenly south region if it was suffering from the simultaneous expansion of the devilish Dao and the righteous Dao? The cultivation worlds of every region would be in a state of war. It was only a matter of time. As such, he may as well stay in the state of Yue. After all, one's homeland was hard to leave. The first thing Han Li did when he returned to his Immortals cave was to soak the spider eggs in the spirit well spring. The spiritual chi should slowly incubate and grow them. Then he quickly secluded himself for 2 days and finally finished refining the first layer of the great development technique. He didn't know whether it was a coincidence, but the Azure Essence sword art simultaneously broke through to the 5th layer after a long period of no progress, much to his surprise. This caused Han Li to enter mid-foundation establishment. When Han Li sensed this, he greatly rejoiced. After all, every increase in cultivation would increase the chances of one's survival within this period of chaotic unrest. But what baffled Han Li was that, even after several days, the sect had yet to assign him a mission. This caused Han Li to feel uneasy. According to his experiences, the rarer the tasks, the more dangerous and troublesome they would be. But now that Han Li thought better of it, they were currently at war against the 6 sects, so there were no safe missions. If he nearly lost his life guarding a spirit stone mine, then who knew what would happen on a different assignment? After these considerations, Han Li's mind became calm once more. Should he take advantage of this short break to start investigating this greater displacement medallion? As for his master Li Huiyuan and Hong Bai, he didn't need to explain the matter of Dong Chuaner to them. As core formation cultivators, they had long since left the sect on missions. In the Heavens Knowledge Pavilion within Yellow Maple Valley, Han Li spent 2 days of frantic searching, eventually finding a simple introduction of the Greater Displacement Medallion in a book called Knowledge of Cave Mysteries. According to the book, this lustrous blue command medallion was actually used by ancient cultivators to transport themselves across extremely long distances. One must have this magic tool, or else the journey's safety couldn't be guaranteed. By only possessing a similar, shifting movements medallion, a cultivator wouldn't die from the pressure of being transported through a long distance of space. As for short-distance teleportation, the pressure could be disregarded. For example, with the small transportation formation at Yue Lu Hall, Han Li hadn't felt the slightest bit of discomfort. As for how the shifting movements medallion guaranteed the safety of long-distance transportation, the book didn't explain. Furthermore, the method to create the shifting movements medallion had long been lost during the turmoil of the ancient cultivation world. Existing, greater displacement medallion had also disappeared one by one without a trace. In current times, it had already become an item of lore, an item that nobody was heard to possess. However, in the current cultivation world, this may not be the case. Because ancient transportation formations had become an object of legend earlier than the greater displacement medallion, a single such formation could not be found in the heavenly south region, though this could not be said for other places. It was slightly possible one could be found in a desolate area or a sect's hidden grounds. But in the current cultivation world, the farthest a transportation formation could travel was about 50 kilometers. As for ancient transportation formations, they could travel for over several millions of kilometers. They fundamentally couldn't be compared. Even as such, a sect or clan could only afford the construction of 3 or 4 transportation formations. Any more would be far too much of an expense. Now that Han Li clearly understood the usage of the greater displacement medallion, the first thought that came to mind was, could it be that the underground transportation formation was an ancient transportation formation? This guess caused Han Li's heart to wildly thump. He knew the odds of this were high. If this were true, with this greater disposition medallion and with a repaired transportation formation, he could immediately travel to a place at least 5 million kilometers away. He wouldn't need to get further tangled in this mess between the 7 sects of the state of Yue and the 6 sects of the devilish Tao. He could travel to a new place and continue his cultivation there. With this thought, Han Li found he was unable to restrain himself. He started to look for books regarding ancient transportation formation to see whether or not there was a method to restore that underground transportation formation. Han Li spent many days searching through the libraries of the Heaven's Knowledge Pavilion. However, he hadn't found a single formation spellbook with regards to ancient transportation formations. This caused Han Li to become greatly disappointed. At this moment, Han Li thought of a single person who could perhaps help him restore this formation. Chapter 272, 1 year. The person Han Li thought of was naturally Xianxia, whom he had made a pact with several years ago. Since Xianxia, a friend and formation spell master, was proficient in the 5 elements reversal formation, surely he should be very knowledgeable about other formations. This ancient transportation formation could also be considered a formation spell. As such, perhaps this friend of his could help him restore the formation. As Han Li thought of this, his heart felt greatly moved. After thinking about the dates, he realized that the day the two had arranged to meet again shouldn't be far away. However, he could be dispatched on a mission at any time, so he wouldn't be able to immediately leave to go find him. It seemed he had not choice but to postpone the trip. After a moment of contemplation, Han Li felt slightly disheartened and was no longer in the mood to further look through formation spell books, returning to his Immortals cave. Returning to his Immortals cave, Han Li discovered that the spider eggs had grown larger. It seemed the spirit wellspring was quite effective at accelerating their incubation. When Han Li saw this, he immediately drew a simple spirit-controlling spell formation, a cultivator's basic method for controlling infant demonic beasts. He then bled several drops of essence blood into the spell formation and placed the spider eggs within. The spell formation took effect, and the 2 white eggs absorbed the essence blood. Han Li then placed them back into Spirit Spring. As Han Li finished this, a sound transmission talisman arrived and told him to go the main hall without delay. His heart trembled. He knew his assignment has finally come. On the main battlefield between the 7 sects of the state of Yue and the 6 sets of the devilish Tao, at a patch of stones in the Golden Drum Plains at the common border between the states of Yue and Qi, Han Li was controlling 2 streaks of light formed from his black dragon's grasp and several golden blades. He was madly attacking an early Foundation establishment disciple from the Ghost Spirit sect at all sides. Although the black chi on his opponent's body surged formidably and had several human skulls faintly howling around him, under the violent storm of attacks from Han Li's 2 magic tools, Han Li quickly found an opening and chopped him into pieces. Han Li skillfully snatched the other's storage pouch from his body, yet another person had disappeared from this boundless wasteland. By the time he reaped his harvest, the sky had already turned dark. As usual, the core formation cultivators of the Devil Tao and the 7 sects should have come out to fight. If the battle spread to his location, he was certain to die an unjust death. Han Li recalled a battle between core formation cultivators that he had previously witnessed with his own eyes. Fear still lingered in his heart. The magic battle between the cultivators of Saber Transformation Dock and the controlling spirit sect had shattered the heavens and earth and swept back and forth over several kilometers. From then on, so long as the sky was the slightest bit dark, he made an early return even if he turned up empty-handed. A year before, he and several others had received orders to escort a spirit stone transport to this location. Afterwards, they would remain there and become high-grade cannon fodder for the Seven Sects, participating in multiple successive large-scale battles. The battle that had just occurred deep within the Golden Drum Plains was such a battle, where over 1,000 scattered enemies mutually killing one another was a common occurrence. What was even more baffling was that ever since the second campaign between the Devil Dao and the Seven Sects had resulted in a draw, the two sides facing each other across the vast Golden Drum Plains would engage in a large skirmish every month, as well as random battles, both small and large, occurring every day. The so-called large skirmishes involved both sides dispatching over 1,000 troops in a mutual struggle. For small melees, each side would dispatch small groups of cultivators spanning from groups of 3 to 5 or even solitary cultivators to the center of the Golden Drum Plains, all of whom sought to kill enemy cultivators. Large skirmishes didn't go as one would expect. Although both sides had fought fervently enough, the number of casualties were quite small. If a side truly tried their utmost, the other side would activate their core defensive barrier, so it would become extremely difficult to harm them. For other smaller skirmishes, because the strength of core formation and foundation establishment cultivators were incomparable, they tacitly agreed to reserve the time between morning and early evening for close skirmishes between foundation establishment cultivators after each side had probed one another out. When night arrived, core formation experts would appear, and a great battle would occur. Core formation cultivators fought alone, one-on-one, even if they were likely to be defeated or sustain heavy injury. But if their lives were in danger, the speed at which a core formation cultivator could flee with all their strength was truly astonishing. A year passed in this manner. Each side had suffered several hundred losses of foundation establishment cultivators. As for core formation cultivators, their losses also were not few. This caused the leaders of both sides to feel great heartache at their losses and a bit of depression. As for chi condensation cultivators, because their magic power was meager, they could only prepare their strength and had preserved the entirety of their numbers. However, with this passing year of war on the battlefield, sabotage and raids had not ceased, causing both the Devil Dao and the Seven Sects to feel they could not endure much longer. Both sides simultaneously attempted to weaken the other and accumulate their own strength. They both clearly understood that the moment of their decisive battle was soon drawing near. After 2 hours on the Divine Wind boat, Han Li arrived at his allied camp. Wood and stone rooms of various sizes could be faintly seen from within the great restrictive formation, scattered about without any semblance of a pattern. These were improvised buildings created by cultivators with wood and earth attribute Taoist magics. Naturally, the camp was divided into regions according to their sects. Han Li first went to his dwelling, a stone room that wasn't very large. After he firmly closed the door, he temporarily sealed the room with essence restriction formation flags. Then Han Li took out the items from the storage pouch he obtained today and laid them out before starting to pick through them. Again with heaps of human skulls and small flags, apart from the ghost spirit sect, who else would have such use for these ghostly items? This sword isn't bad. I'll keep it as a spare. This. After Han Li muttered to himself as he quickly separated the magic tools that would be of use and would remain. Those that were of little value and could not be used would go into a separate storage pouch. After Han Li put everything into the storage pouches, Han Li removed the formation and walked out. He turned several corners and eventually walked toward a very conspicuous room. This wooden room spanned a length of 150 meters and was painted with golden paint all over. When the sun set it glimmered as if it were truly made from gold. Han Li impolitely pushed the door and entered. The room was bustling with activity and had several tens of trading stalls set up by cultivators. There were even more cultivators who were currently haggling over the price or picking items from the trading stalls. With great familiarity, Han Li hastily rushed through several stalls and turned the items in his storage pouch into spirit stone with great speed. After all the items had disappeared, he had about 100 more spirit stones. Han Li didn't pay any further attention to anything else and went to the center of the room toward the largest vendor stall. This vendor's stall spanned over 20 meters, nearly 3 to 4 times bigger than the other vendor stalls. The stall's owner was a chubby mid-foundation establishment cultivator. Han Li didn't say any superfluous words and immediately threw a storage pouch full of spirit stones toward the fatty, impolitely saying, "Elder Brother Chen, I have gathered 500 spirit stones for the dragon cry grass." Well, if it is Brother Han, truly impressive, you managed to gather this many spirit stones so quickly. When the fatty saw Han Li, he immediately beamed with a smile. Then he sunk his consciousness into the storage pouch within his chubby hands to count the spirit stones. Not bad, not bad. It really is 500 spirit stones. Here is the dragon cry grass. Make sure to put it away properly. Fatty Chen then took out a jade box with a joyful smile and handed it over to Han Li. Han Li took the small box and immediately opened it to see what was inside. He then nodded his head and put it away. Afterwards, he asked the fatty with slight anticipation, "With regards to my previous requests for pill formulas, is there any news? So long as there's a pill formula, I am willing to pay a bit more." "Old pal, pill formulas are extremely rare. Although foundation establishment cultivators are likely to have some, they are extremely treasured items. Who would dare to take them out and sell them? Furthermore, if dear friend wishes to have pill formula that are of use to foundation establishment cultivators, it would be even more difficult. I've spared no effort, but even so, I truly haven't been able to find any." When Fatty Chen heard Han Li's words, his face grew bitter as he poured out his complaints. Feeling slight disappointment, Han Li wore an indifferent smile and said, "It doesn't matter. If there's nothing, then forget it. I still must thank Elder Brother Chen for helping find those 2 formulas earlier." When Fatty Chen heard those words, he happily smiled, saying, "Those 2 nearly ruined pill formulas were something I picked up over my many years. I didn't dare to be confident that you would actually want them. However, dear friend wished to take them and experiment to see whether he could improve them. This is something ordinary people wouldn't dare to do. After all, the energy and time required to do so is far too great. It's a feat that perhaps would be accomplished with the constant efforts of multiple generations." The fatty said this while feeling slightly moved. When Han Li heard this, he faintly smiled and didn't say anything else. Ever since Han Li arrived here, he shockingly discovered that within the camp's improvised market, there were many rare goods that couldn't be found in market cities. From medicinal herbs and raw materials to magic tools and cultivation techniques, it nearly had them all. All the medicinal ingredients he lacked for the spirit gathering pill were easily gathered within the market. With only a bit of maturation, he'd be able to immediately progress his magic power once more. With this fatty here, Han Li only had to spend about 1,000 spirit stones for 2 of his greatly desired pill formulas, much to his pleasant surprise. Chapter 273, A Timely Encounter. After pulling out a majority of the spirit stones in his pocket, Han Li even collected a majority of the ingredients necessary for the new ancient pill formulas. As for the remaining missing ingredients, Han Li gritted his teeth and risked taking out 2 400-year-old spirit herbs to sell. His other option was to participate in a few more assignments to kill Devil Dao cultivators. In this way, not only could he earn a reward of a considerable amount of spirit stones, he could also exchange the items found in the enemy's storage pouches for even more spirit stones. Based on the numerous treasure talismans he possessed and the strength of the great development technique, even if Han Li ran into late foundation establishment cultivator, he could escape from the opponent safe and sound. Similarly, if early or mid-foundation establishment cultivators were to run into Han Li, they naturally would not have any strength to retaliate and could only flee for their life from Han Li. Of course, how could important foundation establishment cultivators like the Ghost Spirit Sect's young master participate in these kinds of operations? Just like this, Han Li earned himself a small bit of reputation among the 7 Sects foundation establishment cultivators this past year. Everyone knew that a vicious character had emerged from the Yellow Maple Valley. While his cultivation base was only that of the mid-foundation establishment, he inconceivably hunted down over 10 Devil Dao cultivators and was still able to return whole. Han Li used the spirit stones that he had exchanged to gather all the remaining ingredients for the ancient pill formulas. Upon hearing that the campgrounds of a few other sects also had similar exchange locations, Han Li asked Fatty Chen to be on the lookout for pill formulas, but now it seemed there wasn't much hope. Just as Han Li wanted to say goodbye to the other person, a gust of fragrant wind suddenly reached his nose. Slightly stunned, Han Li twisted his head around to take a look. An elegant and cold female cultivator was approaching from behind. Upon clearly seeing that newcomer's touching face and that dainty body with full assets, Han Li's expression did not change, but in his heart, he was somewhat uneasy. It was actually Junior Marshal Sister Chen, with whom he had had skin-to-skin contact before. As soon as he thought about the provocative and erotic scene from that night, a strange feeling surged up in his heart. Come to think of it, he and this woman had not run into each other ever since the departure from the forbidden area, so he didn't know when she had arrived at this camp. Fifth uncle, this is the item that you asked for. Junior Marshal Sister Chen indifferently sized up Han Li. Soon after, a trace of shock flashed across her eyes, but she still arrived in front of Fatty Chen and handed a storage pouch over to him. Niece Kaiokian, your arrival is too timely. I was just thinking about these goods. Fatty Chen said with delight upon seeing Junior Marshal Sister Chen, his jowls flapping. Fifth uncle. Han Li was stunned by Fatty Chen's title for quite some time. He never expected that this Fatty, whom he had known for the greater half of a year, was actually Junior Marshal Sister Chen Sr. Just based on his mid-foundation establishment cultivation base, his status in the Chen clan would definitely not be low. After initially glancing at Han Li, Junior Marshal Sister Chen did not send a single glance in Han Li's way. This cold treatment caused Han Li to feel unhappy in his heart. Senior Marshal Brother Chen, I will take my leave now, but I will definitely come visit you in the future, Han Li said politely, unwilling to stay any longer. He turned his head around and walked out of the market. At this time, Chen Kaiokian finally gazed coldly at Han Li's disappearing figure. Her eyebrows were tightly knit as she asked Fatty Chen, who was inspecting the storage pouch. Fifth uncle, was this scaredy cat trying to buy something from you? Scaredy cat? Fatty Chen was shocked by Chen Kaiokian's words. Yes, the fellow who was just standing here. You're talking about Han Li. Fatty Chen blinked his tiny eyes as an expression of disbelief surfaced on his face. Yes, I'm talking about him. Is there something wrong with that? Chen Kaiokian asked, somewhat curious. Back then, during the expedition to the Forbidden Area, Han Li had not given this Junior Marshal Sister Chen any good impressions. She always reckoned that Han Li was someone who had run into a great deal of good fortune and always took the opportunity to escape from a fight. Fatty Chen sat in silence for a moment before suddenly sighing, saying with a strange tone, Okian, you've just arrived here and are ignorant about some matters. Although I don't know why you think this guy is a scaredy cat, your fellow sect member's reputation here is not small. He is an extremely strong character who exterminated over 10 Foundation establishment cultivators in succession and is definitely not a mediocre individual. I even want to recommend this person to the clan leader after a few more battles. If we can win over this guy, he will be a great help to us. He exterminated over 10 Foundation establishment cultivators. Junior Marshal Sister Chen asked, the cold expression on her face turning into one of amazement. She truly did not dare to believe what she was hearing. She couldn't help but gaze blankly at the exchange location's front door, but by now, Han Li had already left the room for quite some time. After walking out of the exchange location, Han Li pondered for a moment, then headed towards his master Li Huayuan's residence, preparing to pay his respects to his master according to common convention. As a core formation cultivator, Li Huayuan's residence could not be compared to those of regular cultivators. He lived in a cozy little house in the middle of a large formation. His wife naturally lived together with him. As for Han Li's 7 senior martial brothers, apart from the eldest, who was still standing guard outside of the Green Ripple Cave, all the others had missions and were not present here. The only ones remaining here were Han Li and his 4th senior martial brother, Song Meng. The first day that Han Li arrived and went to see Li Huayuan, his cultivation base of mid-foundation establishment caused his master to feel great shock. After all, Han Li had only successfully entered Foundation establishment a few years ago. Under normal circumstances, even cultivators with good talent would need to spend 10 or more years before advancing from early to mid-foundation establishment, so Han Li's sudden advancement in leaps and bounds naturally aroused Li Huayuan's curiosity. After finding no evidence from searching Han Li's body, he asked some questions related to the cause for Han Li's cultivation base to grow so quickly. Han Li naturally would not reveal the truth. Instead, he put on an act of confusion, as if he also didn't know what had happened, causing Li Huayuan to feel depressed for quite a while before dropping the matter altogether. After all, he was currently confronting grave difficulties. He was not in the mood to spend too much time investigating this matter. As for the matters of the Yan clan defecting and Dong Chuaner falling into enemy hands, Li Huayuan and Hong Fu both already knew about it. Apart from being extremely enraged by this, they did not actually blame Han Li too much. After all, the opponent's strength was too great. For Han Li to be able to escape with his life was already not an easy feat. Just as Han Li was thinking these things, he had already arrived outside of Li Huayuan's residence. What shocked him was that his fourth senior martial brother Song Meng was actually standing outside the room with his arms hugging his shoulders, strangely full of energy as if he were a posted sentry standing guard. Upon seeing Han Li, Song Meng's face revealed a trace of laughter. He said in a deep voice, "Junior martial brother Han, you've come to pay your respects to master once again." Han Li gently laughed and gave an N. After Han Li had become somewhat famous, Song Meng forced Han Li to spar with him privately. Although Han Li had relied on a magic tool to penetrate his defenses and claim a small victory, he slowly began to feel friendlier towards Han Li, and between the two of them, they actually began to laugh and talk with one another. "Junior martial brother Han, Master is currently discussing with some guests, so you should wait outside for now. Come to think of it, I've made some progress in my cultivation technique. Why don't you spar with me in a bit?" Song Meng smiled as he explained to Han Li, but immediately after he made an invitation that caused Han Li's head to hurt greatly. Ever since senior martial brother Song had lost to him, every so often he would ask that Han Li spar with him one more time. However, how could Han Li be willing to reveal his true strength? Naturally, he firmly refused every time. If this were the Yellow Maple Valley, this senior martial brother Song wouldn't be so easy to shake off. Luckily, many strong cultivators were in this campground, and many opponents as well. Song Meng, seeing that he did not succeed after pestering Han Li a few times, was unable to bear his own temperament and went to go find other people. Only then could Han Li finally let out a sigh of relief. Thus, upon hearing Song Meng's last sentence, Han Li bitterly laughed once. No matter what, he did not dare to easily agree to what was being discussed. However, Han Li was very interested in Li Huayuan and the group of guests with him. After all, for Song Meng to use such respectful words meant that the people in the room most likely were core formation cultivators. But just when he wanted to gather some information from Song Meng, the tightly shut door suddenly opened, and a few male and female cultivators walked out from inside. Li Huayuan and his wife followed closely behind, clasping their hands and sending them out. As expected, they were all core formation cultivators. Han Li clearly saw that of the 4 men and 3 women, their cultivation bases were unfathomably deep. He and Song Meng did not dare to block the road and hurriedly split, one left, one right, helplessly standing to the side. Li Huayuan instantly saw Han Li, but he only gave a light smile before paying no further attention to him. The other cultivators naturally also glanced at Han Li, but most of them ignored him after that. After all, a mid-foundation establishment cultivator was truly nothing worth taking note of. However, a slender and perfectly figured female cultivator with a veil over her face suddenly stopped after her gaze swept over Han Li, her figure shaking. At the same time, a strange, difficult-to-discern light flashed across a pair of bright eyes. Has Celestial Nangong met this lowly disciple before? Upon noticing this female cultivator's strange behavior, the other cultivators couldn't help but glance at this woman somewhat strangely. Even more, Li Huayuan opened his mouth to ask this, feeling even more shocked. As soon as the words Celestial Nangong reached Han Li's ears, Han Li's heart jumped. A surge of indistinct emotions rampaged through his heart. Although he forcefully maintained his expression, he still couldn't help but glance at this female cultivator. TL, in Chinese the 5 flavors Chinese letter are spicy, salty, sour, sweet, and bitter. Basically, that earlier phrase meant his heart was in emotional turmoil. Note, in Chapter 165, Junior Martial Sister Chen was attacked by Senior Martial Brother Lu. Junior Martial Sister Chen was saved by Han Li, resulting in Han Li acquiring 2 Foundation Establishment pills. Note, in Chapter 208, Han Li slayed the Inky Flood Dragon with the help of Celestial Nangong. The Flood Dragon released an aphrodisiac upon death, leading to a passionate night. Chapter 274, Appointment. No, it's just that he looks very similar to an old friend that I haven't seen in a long time. The strange expression in Celestial Nangong's eyes disappeared, and she recovered her clear, cold gaze. This sentence caused Han Li's heart to feel a tart, slightly bitter taste. "Oh, then this is really coincidental," Li Hueyuan gently laughed and said, sizing up Han Li once again. However, Han Li's face was as calm as water, not revealing even the slightest odd reaction. The other cultivators glanced at each other once. Although they all revealed knowing expressions, only the heavens knew how much they truly believed. This celestial Nangong also knew that these words were unlikely to obtain the trust of the others. However, she still offered no defense and floated away. The remaining people all gazed at Han Li with deep meaning before saying their goodbyes to Li Hueyuan and his wife. The smile on Li Hueyuan's face slowly disappeared after sending off all the guests. He knitted his eyebrows, then turned around and said to Han Li indifferently, "Follow me into the room, I have some things to ask you." Seeing this, Han Li bitterly complained to himself, but he could only agree. As for his master's young wife, she gently assured Han Li with a few sentences, then followed him into the room. When Han Li walked into the guest lobby, Li Hueyuan was sitting on the chair, appearing very thoughtful. "You and Nangong, one of the masked moon sect, know each other." Li Hueyuan, upon seeing that Han Li was in front of him, stopped his contemplation and directly asked Han Li this without beating around the bush at all. Han Li was silent for a while upon hearing this, weighing his options in his heart many times. He knew that Nangong Wan's strange behavior had definitely been noticed by his master, and that he would have no way of making something up to get by. Thus, he could only nod his head in acknowledgement. This disciple truly had a fateful encounter with this martial Aunt Nangong once. Upon hearing Han Li confess this so easily, Li Hueyuan actually felt that it was somewhat strange, and the expression on his face immediately became warmer. "Can you tell me what exactly happened?" The young woman's curiosity was greatly aroused upon hearing these words from Han Li, and she couldn't help but ask this question. Just then, Nangong Wan had directly denied that she and Han Li knew each other, yet now this disciple suddenly said that they did know each other. There definitely would be some interesting stories involved. When Li Hueyuan heard his wife ask this, he also nodded his head and gazed at Han Li. It seemed that he also wanted to know the whole story. "Master, please forgive me. Because this matter involves some of Martial Aunt Nangong's personal matters, this disciple once promised her that I would absolutely not leak this matter. Please forgive me, Master and Master's wife." Han Li tactfully refused, having long prepared a completely fair excuse. Hearing these words, Li Hueyuan and his wife were incredibly astonished. After glancing at each other, Li Hueyuan thought first before slowly speaking, as if he were deliberating over something. "Since you made an agreement with her, I naturally cannot force you to break that promise. However, Master would like to remind you that it's best to limit contact with this celestial Nangong. One should know that the charming techniques of the masked moon sect are quite impressive, and I'm worried that you will fall under her Tao without even realizing it or are even blatantly ignoring it. But since you appear to be clear-minded and are clear with your words, I am somewhat more assured." Han Li's heart relaxed upon hearing this. He repeatedly said yes in agreement. The last shreds of unease in Li Hueyuan's heart disappeared upon seeing Han Li's respectful expression and attitude. He even happily gave Han Li some pointers and answered his questions on cultivation. Han Li naturally listened extremely attentively, not willing to let a single one of Li Hueyuan's sentences slip by. After asking some questions about Han Li's experiences while cultivating for a long while and being quite satisfied with Han Li's responses, Li Hueyuan suddenly said something extremely surprising. "Han Li, right now I have a personal matter that I would like you to take care of. Are you willing to take up the task?" "Personal matter?" Han Li was surprised in his heart, but he immediately answered without reserve. "If Master has something on his mind, you can just tell me. This disciple will naturally do his best to complete it." Li Hueyuan was very pleased with Han Li's lack of hesitation and stood up, pacing a few steps before saying in a deep voice, "In reality, it isn't something that's too dangerous. I just want to ask you to temporarily act as a bodyguard, ensuring the safety of a family member." "Bodyguard protects someone." Han Li felt somewhat stunned, but he still silently awaited Li Hueyuan's next words. "We originally wanted your fourth senior martial brother Song Meng to go at first, but recently I heard that you killed many Devil Dao cultivators, which greatly shocked both me and my wife. I never expected that such a fierce individual could emerge from under my tutelage. I also heard that even people from the other 6 sects often talk about you. Because of this, I would feel more at peace if you were the one to go." Li Hueyuan gently laughed. One could see that at this moment his mood was very good. At the same time, the young woman to the side similarly said, smiling. In addition, Song Meng has stayed in the Green Ripple Cave ever since he was young and hasn't gained much outside experience. His worldly experience is greatly lacking. This alone is one reason why you must be the one to go. After all, the person you must protect is a mortal from the secular world. Upon hearing the words of praise from Li Hueyuan and his wife, Han Li wore an extremely shy expression and laughed, slightly embarrassed. However, with regards to them wanting him to protect some commoners, although Han Li's expression appeared normal, in his heart he was still somewhat depressed. What kind of dangers would an ordinary commoner encounter? Randomly sending a chi condensation disciple was more than enough to act as a bodyguard. Why would they want him, a Foundation establishment cultivator, to go? Perhaps Li Hueyuan guessed Han Li's misgivings, because he gave both an explanation and a narration. The person I want you to protect is a descendant of my senior martial brother, who once saved my life. However, his only son was a mortal with no spiritual roots. With no way to cultivate, he can only stay in the secular world. Thus, before he died, I promised that as long as I lived for one more day, I would definitely ensure the safety and prosperity of his descendants. I've secretly supported this family for the past 100 or so years by providing many riches and completely eliminating any dangers. Li Hueyuan stopped speaking, as if he were thinking on past matters, but afterwards he collected his expression and said, however, I received notice in the past few days that the 6 devil Dao sects may send out a few low-level disciples and mix them into this state's secular world, and then clean up some of the people that our 7 sects are secretly supporting. They want to damage the supply of basic materials that the secular world supplies to our 7 sects. Because of my relationship with this family, they will most likely also be taken out by the devil Dao's cultivators. Thus, I must have a representative who can go forwards to preserve the safety of this family when the storm hits. Of course, if the devil Dao cultivators don't go looking to start trouble with them, all the better. After hearing this, Han Li respectfully nodded his head, indicating that he understood. Okay, I will write a letter to the current clan leader to tell them your identity and situation. He's also the only person who knows about the matter between me and the previous martial ancestor. I have also already told others that during this period of time, your trip will count as a mission. This way you don't have to worry about being punished. In addition, this Jade slip contains detailed information on the entire clan. Bring it with you and go back to your lodgings and pack your bags. You will depart tomorrow morning, lest the situation suddenly change if you wait. Li Hueyuan ordered after thinking for some time. As you command, Han Li bowed, then gently answered. Han Li sat on the divine wind boat, flying tens of feet above the ground at full speed. His current destination was not the location of the clan that he was supposed to protect in the capital of the state of Yue, Yuejing. Rather, he was flying directly towards the state of Yuanwu. Taking advantage of the somewhat increased freedom of this mission, Han Li was hurrying to make the meeting that he and Xianxia had set. In addition, he wanted to see if that formation master was able to repair the damaged ancient teleportation formation. If the 7 sects were to face a great defeat in a battle, this would be his last resort for escaping. Otherwise, if the 6 devil Dao sects were to have their hands suddenly freed, he could only do his best to survive under their suppression and encirclement. How could he have any time to continue his cultivation in that situation? Han Li estimated that if no accidents occurred on this trip, a short duration of 20 days would be more than enough to take care of his business without delaying the mission Li Hueyuan had given him. Thus, he could continue to move forward assuredly. Xianxia and Han Li's meeting location was in a certain tea house in a small city in the state of Yuanwu. Based on what Xianxia said, the tea house was opened by one of his subordinates, so once Han Li found that location, he could easily contact Xianxia. Han Li moved as fast as lightning the entire way. Even if he occasionally encountered a few other cultivators, he would just brush past them without paying them any additional attention. He had no intentions of chatting with them. After flying non-stop for 7 or 8 days, Han Li finally arrived at the small Golden Horse City. In order to not create a commotion, Han Li landed and put away his magic tools a few kilometers away from the city. Then, he walked slowly towards the city gate. Although this Gold Horse City was not large, the outside of the city door was bustling with people coming and going, seemingly very busy. Han Li's appearance was plain, and the robes he wore had long since been exchanged for a worn-down Confucian robe. When squeezed in the midst of all the people entering the city, he did not draw attention whatsoever. In this way, he followed the flow of the people into the city. This tea house's reputation was not small. Han Li randomly found a child to inquire about the location of the Clear Spring Tea House, and actually easily got the answers he was looking for. He then walked towards the place. Naturally, when Han Li was standing in front of this Clear Spring Tea House, he began to assess it with great interest. Chapter 275 Fragrant Tea. Chapter 275 Fragrant Tea. This tea house wasn't large. It was only a single-story building with 3 rooms. Before having even entered, Han Li could already smell the fragrant scent of tea. Han Li was somewhat surprised. Although Han Li did not understand much about the intricacies of tea, he felt a slight trace of spiritual qi from the tea fragrance. His heart stirred, and he did not hesitate to enter any further. The 3 rooms were arranged side to side with 1 large room and 2 small. At this moment, it was filled with groups of 3 to 4 tea guests. The tea shop didn't have any empty seats, so 7 to 8 differently dressed patrons peacefully waited at the side. Even though the tea shop had many guests inside, there wasn't a single person making a ruckus. The majority of them softly closed their eyes and sipped the fragrant tea before them. There were only a few people who were whispering. On the wall of the largest room at the center, a several-meter-long yellow paper banner hung from the top of the wall. On it was written, "Every guest is limited to 1 pot per day," in large and bold calligraphy. It was quite eye-catching. When Han Li saw this, he found it funny. This was the first time he heard of those making a living from selling food or drink, limiting the quantities that others could buy. However, he only laughed away and didn't take the trouble to think of it further. Instead, he swept his gaze across the room and immediately spotted a person, appearing to be the shopkeeper, pacing back and forth in a corner. This should be the tea shop's shopkeep. He appeared to be over 40 years old and had short facial hair, giving him an exceptionally shrewd appearance. At this moment he was standing at the front counter, using an abacus with a lowered head. From time to time, he turned his head to look at his ledger. Han Li walked several steps over and stood in front of the desk, remaining calm and silent. This caused the shopkeep to look up with a bit of surprise. Once he clearly saw Han Li, his expression immediately changed. He hastily put his abacus and ledger to the side and left the front counter. With slight reverence, he respectfully asked, "Is there any matter this junior may help senior with? This one will spare no effort." This shopkeep was unexpectedly a cultivator in addition to a shopkeep, but his cultivation was pathetically low. He was only at the 4th layer of qi condensation. Now that he was facing a senior with unfathomably deep cultivation, his heart was naturally restless. Han Li didn't say anything further. He lightly wiped against the desk counter with his sleeve pocket, leaving behind a sparkling azure jade pendant on the counter. When the shopkeep saw this jade pendant, he stared blankly at it, but soon after he said with an expression of pleasant surprise, "So it turned out to be Senior Han. This junior is lacking in manners. Young Master Qi has already told me that Senior would arrive in the near future. This junior has been waiting for you for quite a long time." When Han Li heard this, he put away his jade pendant and peacefully said, "I wish to now see your clan's young master. Please show me the way." "I will follow your orders, Senior." He first called over 2 of the store's waiters, and after telling them a few words, he brought Han Li to the back door and left the town, heading west. Gold Horse Town had a large expanse of yellow-green hills on its west side. They were countless and varied of all sizes. The shopkeep brought Han Li through the hills with much familiarity and made several turns. They then arrived at a sunken depression that spanned over 15 acres. At the center of the depression were 7 to 8 white stone rooms. To the east and west of the rooms, there were several batches of thinly spread azure bamboo. After the shopkeep brought Han Li to this location, he bowed to Han Li and said, "Senior, the young master is within the rooms. However, the rooms are surrounded by a few formation spells. Normally, I would report to the young master before bringing an outsider in, but since the young master has already told me about Senior Han, if Senior closely follows behind me, you can enter. Otherwise, you will activate the formation spells." Han Li thoughtfully looked around the depression and the disorderly azure bamboo, indifferently saying, "I understand. Don't hesitate to lead the way." When shopkeepers heard Han Li, he let out a deep breath and carefully brought Han Li to the rooms. His path forward was quite peculiar. In one moment he would walk forward 3 steps, then walk back 2 steps, then walk 5 steps, then turn around and step 6 steps that way. It was quite chaotic. It was as if there was no pattern that could be discerned. As such, the two slowly approached the rooms at the center of the depression. "Young master, Senior Han has arrived. Please come out and see for yourself." When they were about 30 meters away from the room, the shopkeep let out a breath and loudly yelled toward the largest room. "Senior Han has come. That is great. However, please wait a moment. I will be right out." Xianxia's pleasantly surprised voice came from within the room, but soon after, a smothered bang could be heard, followed by Xianxia's bitter cursing. Sigh, another failure. When the stone door opened, Xianxia walked out with an appearance of disappointment. He carried the scent of a blazing fire on his body. However, after he saw Han Li, his face suddenly became bright and excitedly approached, saying, "It really is Senior. This is truly great. Please follow me. Let Junior show your hospitality as a host. This place has some top-quality tea. Let's have a few cups." Xianxia cordially invited Han Li into a room. His movements had become much more experienced since Han Li had last seen him several years ago. "Then I must thank you." Han Li knew that he still had to request his help and was very polite. After that, he entered the room and sat near a long table that was 3 meters long. "Senior, that?" Once Xianxia commanded the shopkeep to make a pot of tea, he turned his hand and seemed to hesitate, wanting to ask Han Li something. With a silent smile, Han Li took out the book Yunxiao Experience and placed it on the table. The book's flickering silver light had remained, showing that the seal was still intact. When Xianxiao saw this book, his spirit shook, but when he thought to reach out and take it, he suddenly thought of something and promptly said, "Senior, please wait a moment." He hastily walked out. Han Li faintly smiled, as if he had guessed his intentions. Not long after, Xianxiao animatedly returned to the room with a small wooden box about a foot long. "Senior, this is a set of formation establishment magic tools for the improved 5 elements reversal formation. Although its strength isn't as high as the spell formation's original might like I predicted, the improved formation is still more powerful than the formation I gave you originally by 3 times." Xianxiao said somewhat apologetically. It seemed he was still a bit worried since he hadn't improved the formation establishment magic tool's power to what was previously agreed. 3 times, Han Li's expression changed, his heart feeling extremely amazed. A tenth of the 5-element reversal formation was already enough to completely satisfy Han Li, who felt there was no need for further improvement. Even a core formation cultivator such as Lei Wan had felt this formation was quite a pain to deal with. If he truly improved the formation to the point where it was 3 times more powerful, it could resist even core formation cultivators. With this thought, Han Li couldn't help but want to look inside the wooden box. Meanwhile, Xianxiao picked up the silver book and carefully looked at it. When Han Li opened the box, he saw a set of formation flags and plates with oppressive spiritual qi. Han Li took them out for a careful look. This set of magic tools had much more formation flags and formation plates than the previous set. Furthermore, the decorative design and written seals were obviously more complicated. It appeared that what he said wasn't false. Its strength was far greater than its previous iteration. Han Li put away the formation flags with satisfaction, and then took a look at Xianxiao. At this moment, Xianxiao had lightly stroked Yunxiao Experience with a smile. It seemed he made a similar inspection and confirmed the seal had remained. "I'm very satisfied with these improved set of formation establishment magic tools. I have truly troubled you, fellow Taoist," Han Li said with a slight smile. Senior's words are over-exaggerating. This one is truly grateful that Senior returned this book with its seal intact. This junior should be thanking you greatly. When Xianxiao heard Han Li's words, he shook his head as if he were beating a drum with it and cordially replied. Han Li smiled, and after saying a few more modest remarks, he chatted a bit with Xianxiao. The shopkeep came a moment later and served 2 cups of lovely emerald green tea. The tea's fragrance was clearly far richer than the tea from the Clear Spring Tea House. Obviously, higher-grade tea leaves released slightly heavier amounts of spiritual qi. Under Xianxiao's eager invitation, Han Li took 2 sips. He immediately felt his mouth refreshed and his mind cleared. He couldn't help but praised it, saying, "Good tea. I didn't know tea leaves could be blended with spiritual qi. It's too wonderful for words. I assume these must have personally been made by fellow Taoists. I'm truly in admiration." Han Li's words were actually said with sincerity. To be able to blend spiritual qi with common tea leaves, this was something Han Li had never heard of. Furthermore, the tea's fragrance was incomparable, far better than the top teas of the mortal world. When Xianxiao heard Han Li's words, he wore an embarrassed expression and hastily explained, "Senior misunderstands. This tea was not refined by this junior. My close friend gave it to me as a present. These tea leaves were the result of nearly 10 years of my close friend's research in the mortal world. Chapter 276, Taking Action. Chapter 276, Taking Action. Close friend. Could it be the individual whom fellow Taoist wanted to save with the spirit herb? Han Li seemed to have casually asked this, but he was inwardly very happy. He had been bitterly worried that he wouldn't be able to raise the subject of that formation master by Xianxia's side. He naturally couldn't let this golden opportunity slip by. Xianxia was stunned when Han Li asked this question, and was a bit hesitant. But soon after, he thought of something and made up his mind, nodding his head. Senior is not wrong. This spirit tea was made this one's close friend. As for that previous matter, it was thanks to medicine created from Senior's 1,000-year-old spirit herb that my friend's life was saved. However, although her life had been saved, her injury is recovering extremely slowly. Therefore, this junior wants to shamelessly ask Senior if he has another 1,000-year-old spirit herb. Even if it isn't a 1,000-year-old spirit herb, as long as it's 700 or 800 years old, it would fulfill my wish for my close friend to fully recover. This one is willing to promise all sorts of formation flags in exchange for the spirit herb. After that was said, Xianxia had a face full of anticipation and was attentively staring at Han Li. When Han Li heard Xianxia's words, he was slightly surprised, but his heart soon relaxed. Since the other party still sought something from Han Li, it seemed he would naturally succeed in his request for the other party to repair the transportation formation. However, his face naturally wore an awkward expression. He would make Xianxia feel like he would owe Han Li a favor. With this thought, Han Li muttered to himself for a moment. After a long moment later, he said with reluctance, "This one does have such a spirit herb on hand. However, this one intended to refine a medicine pill with it and use it. This is truly." Although Han Li didn't finish his sentence, the hesitant expression on his face was enough for Xianxia to imagine the difficulty of this matter. After all, Xianxia should clearly know what refining a top-grade medicine pill signified to a cultivator. When Xianxia first heard Han Li had such a medicinal herb on hand, he immediately revealed an appearance of wild happiness. However, when he heard the words that followed, his expression became extremely apprehensive. Without even waiting for Han Li to finish his sentence, he immediately said with a half-pleading tone, "Junior knows that making Senior Han Li give a spirit herb is a bit forceful. However, this one truly feels great anguish from seeing his dear friend suffering day after day. So long as Senior agrees to seed the spirit herb, this one will allow Senior to choose from this one's formation establishment magic tools as he wishes. Even if Senior wishes to take them all, Junior will have no complaints." When Han Li heard the other party's words, his heart was greatly moved. Even if this Xianxia's formation establishment magic tools weren't as abnormal as the 5 elements reversal formation, they were sure to be rarely seen quality goods. If he had several more sets on hand, he would be able to increase his defenses by no small amount. Even better were the formation spells with extremely powerful offensive capabilities. If he could trap strong enemies within the formations, it would also be another incisive method of attack. However, the main objective of this trip was to have the other party restore the damaged transportation formation. If he were to take a few formation establishment magic tools, then this matter couldn't be fulfilled, and if he asked for too much, he would give the other party the impression that his greed was insatiable. Han Li did not currently wish for these two to become hostile towards him. After Han Li pondered about this, he intended to refuse the other party's exchange and raise the matter about the transportation formation. But at this moment, the flustered yell of a young woman suddenly came from outside. "Young Master Qi, it's bad. My clan's young madam has encountered mishap. Please save my clan's young madam." Xianxia's face immediately changed once the voice penetrated the walls. He hastily stood and left the room without even said anything to his guest, Han Li. The shopkeep standing to the side similarly ran out the room with a panicked and pale face. Han Li raised his eyebrows, but his expression didn't change. Still, he felt puzzled and slowly walked out with hands behind his back. Outside the room, Xianxia and the shopkeep were attentively and nervously listening to a talking woman who appeared 18 or 19 years old. This girl was pretty and had fair skin. As she was talking about something, she had an anxious appearance. She immediately shut her mouth with fright when she saw a stranger, Han Li, walk out of the room. An expression of vigilance flashed from her eyes. Seeing this, Han Li gave a smile without paying it any mind and stood still. He didn't walk any further. But after Xianxia turned to look at Han Li, it appeared as he had grasped life-saving medicine and flew to Han Li's side. He excitedly pleaded to him, "Senior, this one's close friend is currently being restrained by cultivators with malicious intent. Right now, only Senior can save her. So long as Senior agrees to take action, this junior will be sure to give heavy payment as equivalent thanks. Could Taoist friend Qi please give me a few details? Is the young woman spoke of, your dear friend, the formation spell master?" Han Li wrinkled his brow, asking with some surprise. "That's right. The 5 elements reversal formation establishment magic tools that Senior previously used were jointly refined by this one and that young lady," Xianxia hastily said as he looked at Han Li with impatience. It was at this moment that the pretty woman then discovered that she was incapable of seeing how deep Han Li's cultivation was, even with her cultivation base at the 5th layer of qi condensation. This caused her to open her mouth in shock and then look at Han Li with fear. Han Li then turned his body to the woman and said with a deep voice, "Could this young woman explain it once more? I want to know the whole story." Although Han Li knew this was the best opportunity to gain favor, he needed to know the enemy's strength and numbers. He didn't wish to fail and be in need of rescue himself. "Oh, it's like this. Today, the young lady and I arrived somewhere nearby." When the pretty woman saw Han Li ask her this, she couldn't help but repeat the story once through in a fluster. Originally, this young woman's young madam had ran out of high-quality tea leaves to refine into spirit tea. As per previous custom, she went to the nearby Jade Cloud Mountain to pick a few leaves, but she unexpectedly ran into a group of male qi condensation cultivators. When the master and servant saw so many cultivators appear, they already felt something was wrong and intended to immediately leave the mountain. But who would have thought that there was a person from these group of cultivators who would recognize one of the women as a formation spell master who had set up a formation spell for some small clan? This person immediately informed this matter to his colleagues. As a result, this group was filled with evil intent and intended to capture this woman alive, forcing her to give them her knowledge of formation spells. However, the young madam was exceptionally quick-witted and didn't wait for the opponent to act, having her servant rush off the mountain to escape. But as she herself was halfway down the mountain, she discovered people relentlessly pursuing her. They were growing increasingly closer and would soon overtake and capture her. Without a better option, she could only use the formation flags she had on hand to arrange a simple formation spell in the middle of the forest, protecting herself. Then she had this servant rush towards Xianxia in order to call for help. As Han Li heard the other party's account, he muttered to himself indecisively. According to the young woman, the enemy consisted of only 7 or 8 qi condensation disciples. He no longer had any qualms and quickly decided that he must help them. With this thought, Han Li nodded his head and said, "We'll follow the lead of this young lady." After saying this, under Xianxia's grateful gaze, Han Li threw out his sleeve, and a small white boat appeared, enlarging itself before everyone's eyes. "Everyone get on board. We must save someone from danger. Although this magic tool is a bit small, it flies extremely fast and will have no problem flying with 4 or 5 people." Han Li's body flashed and reappeared in front of the small boat. He then turned his head and said this to the others. Xianxia and the young woman came to a sudden realization and boarded the small boat. But when the shopkeep also thought to board it, Xianxia stopped him and said, "Uncle Lin, your cultivation is far too low. If you were to go, there would be many dangers. Please stay here. We will immediately return after we save her." When the shopkeep heard this, he appeared hesitant, but he knew that Xianxia meant him well, so he remained with some slight unwillingness. Thus, Han Li and the others flew on the small boat and turned into a streak of white light, disappearing off the edge of the horizon. Han Li quickly flew the divine wind boat south with all his strength. Its quick speed caused the 2 passengers to keep their eyes wide open from surprise. Not long after, they arrived above a besieged formation spell in a forest. At this moment, there were 7 or 8 people viciously attacking the spell formation with magic tools. It seemed the layer of faint azure light that covered the forest had weakened to the point of near destruction. When Xianxia saw this, his eyes grew red, and he immediately wanted to jump off. However, Han Li held him still and insipidly said to him, "Don't rush. It seems the magic tools they are using aren't bad. From this alone, they seem to be from some cultivation clan. Since they knew this young lady was a formation spell master, even if you were to repel them here, they would continue to tangle with you in the future. It would be better for me to help you eliminate them cleanly and wipe away the problem entirely." When Xianxia heard that these people would unceasingly tangle with him in the future, he couldn't help but angrily nod his head. When Han Li saw this, he faintly smiled and then looked at the unknowing cultivators below. Cold light flashed from his eyes. He suddenly raised his two hands, and 2 streaks of black light and 6 streaks of yellow light flew out. In the blink of an eye, they arrived in front of these cultivators and easily encircled the frightened assailants. They all fell to the floor one by one, killed by Han Li instantly. Xianxia and that maid looked at the scene, overwhelmed with shock. Although they knew the difference between Qi condensation and Foundation establishment cultivators was certain to be great, they did not think at all that Han Li would be able to quickly kill so many people with ease. It should be known that the highest cultivation base among these men was the 12th layer. Xianxia himself was only at the 9th layer. Han Li didn't pay any attention to these two's gazes of reverence and had the flying magic tool descend. Without waiting for the divine wind boat to completely touch the ground, Xianxia hastily and impatiently leaped off, rushing into the forest. He yelled with great nervousness, "Yinner, are you all right? The enemies have all died. You can come out now." Chapter 277, Xin Ryan. Chapter 277, Xin Ryan. When Han Li saw Xianxia throw himself into the forest, he widely smiled. Although Han Li wasn't very experienced with the matters between men and women, after seeing him lose such self-control, it was quite obvious how Xianxia viewed this woman who was proficient in formation spells. It definitely wasn't merely a good friendship. It was most likely a relationship of deep affection between a man and woman. Why else would he be so nervous? That servant girl also followed him, burning with anxiety. Han Li patiently waited outside the forest. A moment later, Xianxia and that pretty servant girl were happily walking out the forest, accompanied by a blue-clothed woman. With no trace of politeness, Han Li took a direct and careful look at this blue-clothed woman. She was of medium stature, had a delicate, small nose and a pair of bright eyes as clear as water. When she and Han Li looked at each other, she revealed a faint smile. It seems this Xianxia had already told this woman about his identity. To tell the truth, this woman's facial appearance was not remarkable, not quite as good as that pretty servant girl. However, her graceful and easy demeanor, refined movements, and black pupils that seemed to be able to speak more than made up for her somewhat lacking appearance. If someone were to see this woman, they would not feel this woman's appearance was lacking, but would rather feel stunned. It was impossible to mistake who was servant and master among the pair. When Han Li saw this woman's exceptionally elegant bearing, he felt a great headache. He didn't need to guess. This woman was absolutely of the quick-witted, clever sort, a woman far more intelligent than normal. It was likely that negotiating with this lady would expend a great deal of effort. It absolutely wouldn't be as easy as dealing with Xianxia, where he was in full control of the situation. "Many thanks to Senior for coming to rescue me. This young woman is Xin Ryan. I can't thank you enough." The blue-clothed woman leisurely walked in front of Han Li and gracefully saluted him several times while saying this with composure. Her voice was as sweet and smooth as silver. "Young Lady Xin, there is no need to be overly polite. This one only expended a bit of effort. However, let us quickly return. It's likely these people have some backing. If they have seniors nearby, it would be quite troublesome." Han Li politely said as he waved his hand, faintly urging the several people to hurry on their way. When Xianxia heard Han Li's words, he somewhat anxiously nodded his head in agreement and said, "That's right, Yinner. Let us hurry and leave this place. This place is far too dangerous." Ever since Xianxia saw Xin Ryan, his eyes hadn't parted from her spotlessly pure and dainty appearance. At this moment, he spoke incomparably intimately, causing Han Li to feel a bit sick from sappiness. The 2 cheeks on Xin Ryan's slightly red face quickly became flushed. She glanced somewhat shyly at Xianxia, and after a moment of hesitation, she slightly opened her mouth and replied, "Fine, let you leave from here. However, these corpses—" Xin Ryan looked at the corpses and thought of saying something else. "This can be solved quickly by burning them into the earth," Han Li said without paying it mind. He raised the 5 fingers of his right hand, and 7 to 8 small fireballs flew out, immediately turning the corpses to ash. Only their storage pouches remained on the ground. Seeing Han Li destroy the corpses with such familiarity caused the woman's face to slightly change and her heart to slightly tremble. But she wasn't some common frail girl. Soon after, her face turned to normal, and she spoke a bit with Xianxia. "I have no use for the items in these storage pouches. If this young woman doesn't turn her nose against it, Do not hesitate to go take them, but be sure not to leave any traces." At this moment Han Li turned his head and gently said this to the pretty servant girl at Xin Ryan's side. "Senior, are you truly giving them to me?" When this young servant girl heard Han Li, her face revealed a pleasant surprise. She couldn't help but ask again, finding it hard to believe. When she saw Han Li lightly smile and nod his head in affirmation, she immediately said many words of thanks and happily ran over, gathering the storage pouches one by one. From her point of view, it was an absolutely happy occasion, as if the heavens had dropped a huge meat pie on her head. These pouches were sure to be filled with treasures. When Xin Ryan saw this scene, she was slightly startled, but soon after her expression returned to normal, and after saying a few polite words to Han Li, she boarded the floating small boat with Xianxia. After that pretty servant girl boarded while happily grasping the pile of storage bags holding high-grade magic tools, Han Li's body flashed and was the last to board the small boat. Spiritual power immediately flowed from his legs, and the boat magic tool flew off. Halfway on the journey back, the blue-clothed woman made a proposition to Han Li and Xianxia to land at her place, so she could formally express her thanks for saving her life. Having the opportunity to get closer to the long-time target of his affection, how could Xianxia possibly say the word no? He eagerly agreed. Han Li also felt that this was a good opportunity to mention his request to restore the transportation formation and did not oppose. Thus, under Han Li's control, the small boat turned and flew northwest at great speed. Under Xin Ryan's directions, Han Li arrived at a small, unremarkable mountain several hours later. Apart from a bit of fog surrounding this mountain, Han Li didn't notice anything noteworthy. It was extremely ordinary, much like countless other nameless mountains of the world. But Han Li clearly understood that a formation spell master's residence would have certain protective measures in place, most likely an impressive formation spell. However, he didn't know much about the Tao of formation spells, and although he wasn't able to detect anything mysterious nearby, he didn't dare to be the slightest bit contemptuous. Under the direction of the blue-clothed woman, Han Li stopped at a group of bamboo rooms halfway up the mountain. This place was Xin Ryan's residence. Xin Ryan brought Han Li and Xianxia to a rather large bamboo room to rest. She and her servant went to another room to bathe and change clothes. After all, the two had quite a bit of dust on their clothes after being relentlessly pursued. To girls who naturally love cleanliness, this was a truly unbearable matter. Han Li sat on a bamboo chair and looked at the restless Xianxia with interest. From time to time, Xianxia would walk to the door and take several glances outside. It was as if this short moment was a difficult wait of 3 years for him. It was the appearance of someone deeply in love. Han Li found this truly amusing, and he couldn't help but slightly raise the corner of his mouth, revealing a somewhat mysterious smile. When Xianxia just happened to turn around, he happened to see this. Xianxia completely blushed and made some vague explanations before sitting down at his original seat with embarrassment. A graceful and virtuous woman and a noble man make a good match. This is a just and honorable matter. Why does fellow Taoist Qi mind it so much? Han Li sampled some of the high-quality tea on the table. After smiling indifferently, he said this with an appearance of ease. "Senior, no, I do." Xianxia became increasingly flustered. At this moment, that servant girl came in, and Xianxia finally relaxed. Not long after, Xin Ryan walked into the room with a graceful bearing. Her white garment resembled a lotus blossom in bloom, causing those who saw her to become extremely dazzled. "Ryan will engrave this debt to Senior Han and elder brother Qi in her heart. Please let this humble woman pour you cups of wine and tea as a token of appreciation." After Xin Ryan entered the room, she went to the side of the servant girl and took a pot of tea from her. Then she sincerely poured a cup for the two. After Han Li took the cup of tea, he bitterly smiled and inwardly sighed. "I truly don't understand this woman. Her words don't reveal anything. Although she hasn't promised anything, she isn't letting us choose anything either." When Xianxia saw that his beloved was serving him tea, he was happy beyond recognition. When he drank a cup of tea, he didn't taste it in the slightest. He only giggled foolishly without end. When Xin Ryan saw Xianxia with this appearance, she felt a great headache. She could only turn toward Han Li and chat a bit. She thought to make some inquiries about Han Li's identity and see which sect or great clan he was from. After all, a foundation establishment cultivator was certain to have some backing. Naturally, Han Li wasn't naive enough to easily reveal his background and deliberately answered vaguely, skirting around her inquiries. After the chat was over, the woman unexpectedly didn't end up with any useful information. This caused Xin Ryan to feel gloomy and even more vigilant against Han Li. From Xin Ryan's perspective, even if Han Li came to help so quickly, Han Li may also hold similar intentions as that previous group. To guard against the unexpected, she naturally became far more careful and used her mind to the greatest extent. Senior Han, since you have saved Ryan, do not hesitate to choose any formation flag and plates that this one has already refined. At this moment, this one happens to have many sets. Could Senior take a look and see if he is satisfied with them? Xianxia finally became a bit sober from his infatuation and said a few words to Han Li. This caused Han Li to be a bit surprised and also greatly happy. He was finally able to mention the problem he was most concerned with. When Xin Ryan heard this, she was startled, but soon after, she smiled toward Xianxia with great appreciation. This caused Xianxia to further giggle foolishly with happiness. With regards to formation flags and plates, there's no rush. This one has another matter for which he wishes to seek help from fellow Taoist Xin. If you are able to help this one solve this matter, there will be no need to bestow any rewards. Instead, this one will give you an 800-year-old spirit herb that I had planned to refine a pill so that you can treat fellow Taoist Xin's illness. Han Li's sudden words caused the two to become greatly shocked. Senior wishes to see the spirit herb. When Xianxia heard these words, he couldn't help but stand and simultaneously ask this with pleasant surprise. At this moment, he was completely absorbed in his wish to treat his beloved's illness and felt greatly moved. Chapter 278, Half-Year Appointment. Chapter 278, Half-Year Appointment. Being the one involved, Xin Ryan started to become similarly excited. After all, this regarded a complete recovery from her long-lasting affliction. However, her expression changed from dark to bright several times. She hesitated and said while biting her red lips, "What sort of matter does Senior wish for Junior to help with? Please do not hesitate to say. As long as it doesn't violate my conscience and morality, this young woman will certainly agree." When Xin Ryan said this and looked at Han Li with clear eyes, she feared Han Li would be unable to answer to her request. Seeing this woman's cautiousness, Han Li couldn't help but give a knowing smile. This reminded him of his own circumstances at the beginning of his journey of cultivation. He had also been very cautious and feared that treading the wrong path would result in his death. Fellow Taoist Xin doesn't need to be so nervous. I only want fellow Taoist to restore a formation spell. So long as you are able to restore it, I will offer you the spirit herb. Han Li soon answered with a calm expression. He didn't evade her straight gaze, but rather met it with a magnanimous gaze. After Xin Ryan heard this, she was a bit skeptical. She then let out a breath and relaxed, blossoming a lovely appearance. She said, "If it is truly a matter of restoration, then it will be no problem. Ryan will do all she can to restore it. Senior, please be at ease." The girl's originally neutral expression suddenly became a clear and bright smile. Han Li couldn't help but be stunned by the beauty of her charm. There was no need to mention that her longtime admirer, Xianxia, had long since fallen into a spell of imbecility from the smile and was incapable of waking himself. When Xin Ryan saw the strangeness of Han Li's gaze, she couldn't help blush a bit more, causing her charm to become even more lovely. At this moment, Han Li hurriedly restrained his previously out-of-control mind and continued, "Truthfully speaking, although this one knows that fellow Taoist Yin's research into formation spells is certainly deep, I don't know if it can truly be repaired. Also, the original formation is incapable of being moved, thus this one made a copy of its designs. I hope fellow Taoist will be able to look at the designs and repair it." With this said, Han Li took out the jade slip from his storage pouch and handed it over to Xin Ryan. She immediately injected her consciousness into it with great curiosity. After examining it, she involuntarily cried out from shock, "Ancient transportation formation." When Han Li heard her shout, the biggest worry in his heart disappeared without a trace. As expected, that transportation formation was an ancient transportation formation. Now, let's see if this woman can repair it. As Han Li thought this, he couldn't help but pay close attention to Xin Yuren's facial expression, afraid that she would reveal an expression of embarrassment. After Xianxia heard the words ancient transportation formation, his face became filled with amazement, and his eyes widened from astonishment. After no less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn had passed, Xin Ryan took a long stretch and eventually withdrew her consciousness from the jade slip. Then she lowered her head and entered deep contemplation for a moment before raising her elegant head, earnestly saying to Han Li, "This is a genuine ancient transportation formation. Someone at my level normally wouldn't be able to repair a completely ruined ancient transportation formation, but the damage on this formation is quite small, mainly at one small corner. Fortunately, I'm familiar with this specific portion of the formation spell, having studied a few ancient formation spells. As a result, I should have a good chance to restore this ancient transportation formation." When Han Li heard those words, his naturally filled with happiness, but her following words were a devastating blow. "However, these ancient spell formations are rarely used, and my research into them isn't very deep. Thus, Senior must give me some time so I can completely restore the design of the ancient transportation formation in the Jade slip." Zin Ryan continued with a face of slight embarrassment. "Of course, how long does fellow Taoist Zin think it will take? I will certainly return by then." After Han Li thought for a moment, he agreed. "Even though I only studied ancient formations for a short time, half a year should be enough," Zin Ryan said without the slightest of hesitation. It seemed she had come up with an estimate earlier. "That's fine. After half a year I will come to pick up the restored design. I hope young Lady Zin will not disappoint me." When Han Li heard this, he nodded his head with a faint smile. At this moment, Han Li formally entrusted the restoration of the ancient transportation formation to this female formation spell master, Zin Ryan. Then he spent the afternoon further chatting with Xianxia and company before bidding his farewell. Before departure, Han Li urged the two to be a bit more careful. It would be best to move farther away. After all, there would certainly be people sent to track down the killers of that group of cultivations. Since they were in the vicinity, they would truly be too easy to discover. When Han Li said this, Xianxia and Zin Ryan took a look at each other and displayed an appearance of embarrassment. They declined to comment on Han Li's suggestion to change residence. Although Han Li felt baffled and worried, he didn't inconvenience them with further words and hurriedly flew his magic tool to the state of Yue. The capital city of the state of Yue, the renowned Yuejing. Not only was it the largest city of the state of Yue, it also happened to be located at the very center of the country. Its roads led in every direction, making it the heart of the entire nation's economic trade. Naturally, the land of such a city had long been completely occupied. Not only was the price of housing several times greater than that of other cities, but there were also many individuals willing to pay this price, but none willing to sell. After all, living in Yuejing itself was a symbol of one's status. Also, the entire city of Yuejing was divided into 4 districts: north, south, east, west. The imperial city was located in the north district. Naturally, only members of the royal family were permitted to live there. Across the city was the south district, home of bureaucrats and officials of all ranks. So long as one monotonically spent half their time on duty, they would have the qualifications to live there. If no one in a household held an official's position, that household would naturally be forced to move to another district. TL note: in Yuejing Chinese letter Yue is the name of the country and Chinese letter Jing means the capital of the country. So the name of the city literally means the capital city of Yue. Chapter 279, The Great Wealthy Qin Residence. Chapter 279, The Great Wealthy Qin Residence. Within the city of Yuejing, the South District was distinctly different from the West District. The West District's tall and great residences were actually jaggedly arranged flat rooms. Those who lived there were all lower-class workers with odd jobs, small peddlers and merchants, and other impoverished people. Naturally, a portion were loafers who came from other districts after being kicked out of their household. Far and away from the West region, the rich merchant households existed in the East District. Although these households didn't have anyone working in the bureaucracy and couldn't live in the South District, their grand residences and courtyards were more magnificent than any other. None of them spared their great wealth in order to bring their household's name to fame, suppressing other nearby great families and putting themselves on top. Naturally, there were a few famous households that the others nearby fundamentality couldn't compete against. Not only was the amount of land they owned great, but also their riches and prestige far exceeded the others. The people who lived in these households were merchants that were beyond extremely wealthy. In a corner of the East District, such an extremely rich and powerful household existed, the Qin residence. Their residence spanned over 1.5 acres. If one knew exactly how much land cost in Yuejing, one would be speechless for a long while. Not only was the Qin clan extremely wealthy, but they also controlled a fourth of the copper mines in the state of UA. Furthermore, it was said that their clan master possessed remarkable ability and had officials that specifically spoke on their behalf in the royal court. As such, even the servants of this great and noble household held great confidence, having more sway in their household than other servants. The gatekeeper of the Qin residence, Qin Gui, also thought as such. Every time someone came to the Qin residence requesting to meet with the clan master, regardless of their identity or background, even if they were a bureaucrat, they were always completely polite towards even a low servant of the Qin clan and didn't dare to offend them in the slightest. As time passed, this caused Qin Gui to feel as if he himself were superior. Thus, every time someone sought to pay respects and meet someone from the Qin clan, their gifts naturally couldn't be small. Otherwise, Qin Gui wouldn't look upon them favorably. He might even wait 3 or 4 days before reporting their presence to a superior. Naturally, if a great character knocked on their door, Qin Gui would act in accordance to custom, complete loyal subservience. Towards those young masters and young madams who entered and left the estate frequently, he would eagerly and attentively be at their beck and call. Although many of the masters whom Qin Gui served weren't completely satisfied with him, word spread recently that he would be promoted to become an external steward and would go out to take control of some business. After Qin Gui heard this, he became increasingly happy, and in the following days, he felt that his steps were as light as a feather. Right now, Qin Gui was arrogantly sitting a stool and lying in a shady, cool spot against the gate. This morning, the clan master had left to discuss some business. The several young masters and young madams had already left with their noble friends to take a stroll at Xianxia Temple. Currently, apart from the madams within the estate, only the widowed young Madame Bio remained. This caused to him let out a breath of relaxation, glad of the chance to take a break. When Qin Gui was half asleep with a light cool wind blowing against them, he suddenly heard the shy voice of a male youth in front of him. "Excuse me, is this the Qin residence?" Just as Qin Gui was about to fall asleep, this voice had disturbed him and woken him up. He felt extremely wronged and couldn't help but loudly yell with great anger while his eyes remained closed. "Who are you shouting to? Are you wailing at a funeral? Can't you see that the great Gui is lying down?" With that said, Qin Gui was completely unwilling to open his eyes to take a look. His face wore an extremely resentful expression. From the other party's timid voice, he felt that the owner of the voice was but a minor character who dared to treat him so imprudently. Qin Gui eventually had a clear look at the person before him, a coarsely dressed man who appeared about 24 years old. He had an extremely ordinary appearance and had an early smell coming from his body. He was clearly one of those country bumpkins that had just arrived from the countryside. TL note: the word meaning countryside bumpkin is actually Earth steam bun Chinese letter Chinese letter Chinese letter. Heh. He's a steam bun idiot that came from the countryside. Seeing this, Qin Gui became increasingly arrogant. He sat up from his chair, and without saying anything further, he began showering down admonishments non-stop. It was as if disturbing the great Qin Gui's rest was a severe and unforgivable sort of crime. While he was reprimanding the newcomer, Qin Gui's saliva splattered all around and continued spraying there for more than the time it took to make a cup of tea. This rustic youth appeared as if he hadn't understood the great Qin Gui and appeared to at a loss for words. He could only listen to Qin Gui's tirade with a foolish expression. After a long while, Qin Gui clearly vented the fiery resentment within him before reluctantly stopping his verbal attack. Soon after, he gave the youth a slanted look. It seemed as if he wanted to say something to him. He then casually asked, "What are you doing at our Qin residence? We aren't lacking laborers or servants. Hurry up and leave. The servants at this residence aren't the same as other servants. We won't take in those with muddy origins. Come back after you find a backer." Relying on his past experiences, Qin Gui immediately concluded this youth, whose clothes still stunk of dirt, was certainly someone who wildly imagined to work at the Qin residence. "I'm not looking for work. Qin Yan is my uncle. My family told me to deliver this letter to Uncle Qin." The youth had recovered from the tempest of verbal abuse. After hearing Qin Gui's words, he took out a wrinkled letter from his bosom and stuttered, giving Qin Gui an explanation. "What, the Lord is your uncle?" Qin Gui had felt his mouth go dry, so he went to go take a few gulps from a nearby teapot. But when he immediately heard the youth's words, he spit out a mouthful of tea from shock and asked this with a face pale from fright. "This, I also don't know, but my family had me address him as Uncle Qin." The youth shook his head with a somewhat embarrassed appearance. However, at this moment, Qin Gui no longer dared to easily mock him. If this person truly had some relation to his own lord, then nothing good would come out of it. Then, after a moment of hesitation, he carefully asked, "That letter, could you let this one take a look at it? Please be at ease, esteemed sir. This one only wants to look at the surface of the letter. He doesn't dare to tear it open." When the youth heard what Qin Gui said, he unexpectedly agreed, nodding his head. As he handed it over, he muttered something. "I originally wanted to hand this letter to you so you could quickly hand it over to Uncle Qin." Qin Gui took the extremely wrinkled letter and immediately looked at it several times. Ordinary servants normally wouldn't be able to read, but during Qin Gui's childhood, he had spent half a year in a private school and was actually literate. As such, the much-desired duty as gatekeeper fell upon him. To be personally opened by Honorable Nephew Qin Yan. These large pitch-black words on the letter caused Qin Gui's heart to beat wildly. From their tone, it seemed the letter was written by his own Lord Senior. With this thought, Qin Gui's face immediately changed. With great effort, he squeezed out a faint smile and said to the youth, "Young master, our clan's lord is not here right now, but his wives are within. Would you like to pass this letter on to his wives?" Qin Gui couldn't help but greatly change his attitude and immediately upgrade the youth's title. "This won't do. This letter must be personally opened by Uncle Qin." After the youth hesitated for a moment, he resolutely shook his head. "So it's like that. Then should I first make a report to the madams and see how they respond to your esteemed self?" Qin Gui didn't dare to let the youth leave. If this were an important matter and he were the one to interfere, then great misfortune would come around to meet him. But if he handed this matter over to the madams, then it wouldn't matter what he did. As a long-time servant, he had his own scheming. The youth readily agreed. After Qin Gui let out a breath of relief, he hastily went to call for a passing servant to help him watch the youth and ran into the residence. When other servants came across him and saw that he was running as if his buttocks were on fire, they were a bit shocked. Qin Gui immediately ran to the back court and said a few words to the head maid there, before returning to the entrance to deliver a response with relief. Having returned to the entrance, Qin Gui hastily said a few words to the youth with a smile. A young attractive maid ran over. When she arrived in front of the two, she took several curious glances at the completely rustic youth and relayed a madam's reply. The youth would first rest in a side room and wait for the return of the lord before his identity was judged to be true or false. After all, there were a great many members of the Qin residence. He could buy the child of a senior's concubine that came knocking on their door. Since the higher-ups had already dealt with this issue, Qin Gui felt at ease and continued to guard the main gate. That young maid, then, brought the youth to wait at a guest room for the time being. On the way, several people saw the youth's rustic appearance and glanced at him several times in surprise, causing the youth to greatly feel uneasy. He simply lowered his head and continued following while looking the young servant girls back. When the maid turned her head and saw the youth's strange behavior, she couldn't help but chuckle. She looked several at the man with beaming smiles, finding it quite entertaining. When a side room in the front wing was arranged for the youth, the young maid repeatedly warned the youth to not run around and returned back to report while giggling. After the young maid left the room, the youth with the originally clumsy appearance suddenly straightened his back, and the foolish dullness in his eyes could no longer be seen. This person seemed to appear confident and at ease. The slightest trace of his rusticness could no longer be seen. "I truly did not think this Qin clan was actually so well known. It's impossible for the devil Dao to let such an obvious target pass by." The youth took a look outside the room and slightly wrinkled his brow, muttering a few words to himself. Han Li had exhausted himself by flying at top speed for over 10 days before finally arriving at Yuejing. The Qin residence was the target Li Huayuan requested Han Li to protect. However, when Han Li thought of the identity Li Huayuan arranged from him, he couldn't help but feel greatly gloomy. In the letter, Li Huayuan had the Qin clan master arrange the identity of a Qin clan side branch descendant, causing Han Li to play a destitute relative from the countryside. This was to fool the Qin residents so he could remain for a long time. Although Han Li disliked the identity of being a destitute youngster from the countryside, his disguise didn't require any effort. After all, Han Li was the genuine child of peasant family of some remote countryside village. Thus, he didn't need to put much effort to closely resemble the right tone and mannerisms. After Han Li shut off the room, he meditated and refined qi on the bed. He hoped that while he protected the Qin residents, he would be able to slightly progress his own cultivation. It was already evening by the time Han Li completed a cycle of cultivation. At this moment, someone finally knocked on the door. Han Li's spirit shook, and the expression on his face soon completely vanished. He immediately resumed the appearance of the foolish rustic youngster. Once he opened the door, he saw a servant standing before him. "My clan's lord has returned. The madams are currently calling for you. Follow me," the servant said to Han Li with no trace of politeness. He then turned around and left. It seems Han Li wasn't worthy enough for the servant to put him in his eyes. This was of no surprise. The gatekeeper Qin Gui was the same. As a madam's trusted aide, he had seen many destitute relatives of the Qin residents arrive every year like an autumn wind. Naturally, he didn't particularly pay them much mind. This person thought it was most likely the Lord would meet with this country bumpkin, give him some silver, and then send him on his way. He basically wouldn't stay in this residence for much longer. And Li sincerely agreed and followed this person out of the side room, heading straight towards the Qin residence's receiving hall. At this moment, there was a graceful and magnificent madam who appeared over 40 years old. She was sitting next to the Qin clan master Qin Yan and talking about Han Li's arrival. "Since he dares to come knocking on our door with a letter, he most likely isn't a fake. It seems he was truly sent from a clan senior to come visit us. Let us see what request he has in the end. If it isn't excessive, then we will completely satisfy it. Don't snobbishly cast out this branch clan member and soil our reputation. We cannot lose face because of this." Qin Yan was over 50 years old, but because he had took care of his health well, he appeared only 40 years old, not elderly in the slightest. After he drank a gulp of swallow nest tea and moistened his throat, he said this leisurely.